I'm David Scandura.
I'm Justus Burkett.
And today we're here to find out, is The Northman the greatest movie ever made?
I will meet you at the gates of hell.
At the gates of hell, you will find me.
Welcome to The Greatest Movie Ever Made, the show where we watch a movie and tell you if it's the greatest movie ever made.
To Valhalla!
A movie that is so thoroughly entertaining and compelling that while you're watching it, it's the only thing that matters in the world. I am David Scandura, joined as always by my co-host, Justus Burkett.
Yes.
The Bear Wolf, son of King Arvandil the War Raven, and I am his vengeance!
This is one of the shoutiest, yelliest movies of all time.
I was thinking this last night, and I wonder if you'll agree with me or not.
Yeah.
The yelling never gets boring.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
Every time someone is yelling
Yeah.
this like melodramatic, operatic, mythic dialogue,
Yes.
I'm like, yes, perfect. Give me more of this. I love it.
Literally the climax of this movie, the conclusion of Alexander Skarsgård's character arc in this movie is him kneeling in a volcano, thinking about giving up and accepting his death, and instead yelling. Like, literally, the climax of this movie is just Alexander Skarsgård going, ah! I agree with you. It never gets old. This is, it's just a shouty, yelly, bellowy movie.
It's a veins popping, eyeballs bulging, spit flinging good time.
Dudes be screaming in this movie. Yeah. And yelling fucking archaic, Robert Eggers ass dialogue where it's like, if you don't have the subtitles on, you're like, I got about half of that. Like, but it doesn't matter because the plot's pretty easy to follow because it's one of the most well-known plots in Western literature.
Yes.
It is one of the most famous stories in the history of the Western world. Thanks to a guy named William Shakespeare, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. This is our first after Christmas episode.
Yes.
We're talking about the Northmen.
Yeah. It's the holiday hangover right now.
Right. We're actually, Christmas hasn't happened yet for us.
In the timeline of recording the podcast.
Right.
But by the time it comes out, it will be the holiday hangover. We'll all be like, in that weird liminal space between Christmas and New Year's, being like, what day is it?
Yeah.
What day of the week is it? Do I have to fucking spend any more time around my in-laws? Not my in-laws, just to be clear. That was the editorial my in-laws. My in-laws are great.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Honestly, we probably wouldn't have done an episode if it weren't for the fact that Nosferatu was coming out on Christmas Day.
Right.
And we need those sweet, sweet views or listens and engagements and all that shit.
We got to do the tie-in episode. It's Eggers' new movie's coming out, so we got to cover the most recent Robert Eggers film for that SEO.
Yeah. Because I don't know about you, but like, surprisingly, my holiday week has been extremely busy.
Yeah.
Which normally isn't the case.
Mine hasn't been busy necessarily, but I mean we're basically doing the check-ins now. So tell me about your busy week and how you've been doing.
It's been a lot of getting like Christmas presents finalized and doing that last minute shopping, and then like coordinating with my parents in terms of what our Christmas celebrations are going to be, trying to juggle some things with you, trying to juggle some things with some other friends, and then on top of that, my brother came into town last week, and if I sound like a Viking who had his nose cut off, that's because I got sick on the drive down to pick up my brother from the airport.
Oh, that blows.
And I've been getting over a cold or allergies or whatever for the last few days.
Got it.
And today I can finally like sort of breathe.
Right.
But yeah, that's been me.
Yeah.
It's also been an uncharacteristically warm December, and I am so fucking over that. I want there to be 5 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah, it sucks. And it also sucks that this is probably just going to be like the norm for the rest of our lives.
And it has been for a while. I don't think like we tend to get snow in like January, February.
Right.
But yeah, it's
I'm
just
with
like
you.
the ravages of climate change
Yeah.
have robbed me of a snowy Christmas.
Yeah, I'm with you. These 60-degree sunny ass December days are just like not the vibe. It's like, all right, like I'm ready for it to I'm ready for it to be chilly. I'm tired of like going out in a sweatshirt and being like, it's too fucking hot. I have to take my jacket off and walk around in a t-shirt in fucking December.
Yeah.
Yeah, blows.
How are you doing?
I'm doing better than last week. I know last week I said I was like quite bad. I have gone back to therapy. I have a new therapist, and that has been, the introductory period with a new therapist is always kind of like weird because you don't know this person. They're like a total stranger to you, and then you have to make them acquainted with all of your bullshit.
Yeah, and you have to relitigate all that bullshit in your life story again with a new person.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's been like a mixed bag those first couple appointments just because that stuff is always kind of hard, but it's good, and I'm glad that I'm going again. And I'm feeling better than I was last week, in no small part because of the couple of appointments that I've had. So that's good. Overall, like, not too bad. Had some business travel that I had to do, so that was like annoying and a little bit of a rush, but like my week so far has calmed down a lot since last week. No more like running back and forth, pretty much just travel like on Christmas Day, ahead, and the rest of the year should just be laying low for me, which I'm really looking forward to. I don't know if you had any media to recommend. That's pretty much how I've been doing.
I mean, I had a bad movie to talk about.
Okay, I would love to hear about a bad movie.
We haven't done a bad movie corner in a while. Because it's not going to come up on the worst or the best of 2024 episode as the worst movie of the year.
Yeah.
But I watched Joker Folie à Deux.
Not good.
Not good.
I've been hearing that.
So I think the first Joker movie is a piece of shit.
Yes.
I fucking hate that movie.
We differ on this. I don't like the first Joker. I think it's fine.
I would say watch it again because it got worse for me this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember it being like totally passable and forgettable.
Yeah. But when they announced that the next one was going to feature Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn and
that it would be
they
a
were doing
jukebox musical.
Going to do a musical.
Right.
I was like, that could work.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie that we have is a movie that explores the psychological dichotomy between Arthur Fleck and the Joker. It's a movie that sort of puts the first movie on trial and the fans of the first movie and the character itself.
See, on paper, all of that still sounds okay.
Yes, and
right.
with musical sequences that explore the relationship between Joker and Harley and stuff like that. And that's what the movie is, but it commits to all of those things at about like a 10% rate.
Yeah, that's the
so
problem.
it just sort of becomes this like colorless
right.
sludge that doesn't really have anything to say,
right?
Other than just be like, hey. It was fucked up that my movie about that glorified a serial killer got attention from white supremacists and incels.
If you liked the first movie I made, fuck you.
Yeah, because it's like Todd Phillips has this.
Not the first movie he made, but the first Joker movie.
Yeah. Todd Phillips, I think, has this these delusions of being an auteur. Where he can do he sees himself as a punk auteur.
Right.
Where he's like, I'm going to take Warner Brothers money and just make whatever I want with it.
Right.
And I do respect that. It's just not a good movie.
Right.
You're not Federico Fellini. You can't do this like metatextual examination of your own work unless it's good.
Yeah. And also for every punk success story, there's a million punk bands that sounded like fucking shit and sold 0 records. So,
Yeah. Well, his first movie was a documentary on G.G. Allin.
Yeah.
And that sort of makes sense because he's like, it seems like he sort of idolizes G.G. Allin as an embodiment of the spirit of punk.
Right.
But in reality, just like G.G. Allin, he's just throwing shit on the audience and pooping everywhere. And like, it's a terrible fucking movie.
Yeah.
It is a failure in a different way than the first Joker movie is.
Right.
The first Joker movie is like still a real movie. Joker 2 is like a barely even a movie.
Right.
But it's sort of more interesting failure.
Yeah. Fails in it's like a conceptual failure, it sounds like, which is like more interesting than like a technical failure, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is like it's it's the equivalent of a SpaceX rocket exploding on the launch pad. Really.
Yeah. It's like this thing didn't even have a chance.
Yeah, like it's aiming for the moon, but just it detonates before it even gets off the ground.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's bad movie corner.
Nice.
David's bad movie corner.
Yeah.
Not bad enough to be the worst of 2024. We will bring that up next week.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to recommend?
Well, other than my continuing Beastie Boys run, which I'm still very much on, I did have a music recommendation, which is, I don't know if you've ever listened to, because I know you're a fan of the drone metal Titans Son, or if not a fan, at least a listener.
Sure.
Right. And I don't know if you've ever listened to their collaboration album with experimental art pop composer Scott Walker.
No, I haven't heard Bish Bosh.
It's
Or not Bish Bosh. Soust.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I haven't heard Bish Bosh either.
That's
but
my
yeah.
recommendation for you personally, and also for our listeners. It's not too inaccessible if you're not a metal fan, or even if you're not an experimental music fan. I feel like Scott Walker's kind of operatic, sort of crooning baritone is like a pretty accessible entry point into the sound of the album. So even if you're not like a big experimental music person, I'd be like, give it a whirl. The other thing that I have to recommend is, I'm late to this party, but if you, like me, had not seen M. Night Shyamalan's 2024 film Trap good, give Trap a chance. Trap rocks. I know you're a Trap fan as well.
Yes.
I hadn't seen Trap until this week, and I finally got around to watching Trap, and Trap slaps.
Have you ever heard Metallica and Lou Reed's album Lulu?
Yeah, it blows.
The final recordings of Lou Reed.
Yes, it blows. It's not good.
It's not good. I've listened to it a couple times, and it's not quite as bad as everyone says.
Yeah.
But listening to it, I was like, this just doesn't work. But what would have worked? Lou Reed and Son.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like just take Lou Reed's vocals and put them over pre-existing Son tracks.
Totally.
Perfect. It would be so cool.
Yeah. Son should just do collabs with every weird guy with kind of a mumbly but sonorous baritone vocal delivery.
Yeah.
Just get all those guys in there. Yeah. But the Metallica Lou Reed collab it's not good.
I am the table.
I am the table.
Okay. We're talking about the Northman.
Yes.
Directed by Robert Eggers from 2022.
Yes. This is, I think we said on our last episode, for both of us, our least watched Robert Eggers film. Obviously, as we previously mentioned, we're doing this because Nosferatu is coming out this week.
Yes. And I would hazard to say, I think we're both going to be pretty positive about this movie. If I had to guess, our least favorite Robert Eggers movie?
I was just thinking about this, and I think yes for me, right?
Yeah.
I think for me it's probably Lighthouse Witch, Northman.
Yeah.
Is that yours
and that's
too?
me too. Yeah.
Lighthouse is one for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did have to kind of think long and hard about whether Witch or Lighthouse was at the top, because those are real close for me. Northman's a pretty solid 3, but it's like, it's still a great movie. He hasn't made a bad movie.
Yeah.
Which, spoilers for our verdict maybe, sort of. But like, yeah, I mean, he's had an amazing run so far. 3 great films. This is his sort of his breakthrough into like big studio budget filmmaking.
Yeah, $70 million to $90 million budget.
Yeah. So medium budget, but,
right? But more than it had worked with before. The Lighthouse was made for like 11 million, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, it's his kind of first real like major studio film, rather than like kind of a scrappy independent-ish. Right. And yeah, I feel like there's maybe the reason that it's 3 for me is maybe you can tell that there's some growing pains in this movie, where I think Eggers had gotten so good at doing really small contained stories with The Witch and The Lighthouse. He had demonstrated a real mastery of like the single location movie, where we're trapped in one place, and shit's going down. And with this one, the scope increases, and I think he hasn't necessarily, as an artist, caught up to that yet. So it'll be interesting to see in Nosferatu what that ends up looking like, because I imagine Nosferatu might be more Northman style in that it's not just like we're not just in a single house or a single whatever, you know. But yeah, still a great movie, and obviously we'll get into all the reasons why.
And I think you know, with the scope and scale of this thing, it is much more of an epic. It's more of a journey, but it still has a pretty. It has a simplistic narrative, an easy to follow narrative. Like the main beats of this thing are really clear and cut and dry because they've just been, you know, so baked into our culture over the years.
Yeah.
But it does do a good job of also keeping things focused and contained. And the other thing is, he didn't have final cut on this movie.
Right.
Like, he talks about how the editing process and the post-production process was like a nightmare for him trying to get this thing finished with the studio interference. And I just have to say, like, for a first big, you know, bigger budget studio Robert Eggers film, best case scenario, like, holy shit, this thing could have been so much worse. And it's not even like, it's not even good. I think it's pretty amazing how good this thing is.
I feel like we could have been very easily in like David Lynch Dune territory with this movie, where it's like the studios just didn't know what to do with this like wacky you know, auteur guy. And they were like, you delivered this thing that we don't really know what to do with, so we're going to try and hack it into something commercial. And it seems like that's not really what happened. It seems like his vision is pretty intact.
And this could have been a Gladiator, which or a 300, you know, just a much more straightforward historical sword and sandal epic. But I think Eggers' directorial stamp is still pretty firmly entrenched in this thing.
Fully agree.
And like the movie still allows him to be weird and mythic, which is what I want from him. So maybe like some of those things were probably reined in a little bit.
Which I think is my main complaint with the movie, is that some of the Eggers of it all, the sort of introspective, character driven kind of like internal conflict that is represented by sort of fantastical visuals and sort of an unsettling, like uncanny atmosphere. That's a thing that he's really good at, that is present throughout in The Witch and in The Lighthouse. I feel like in this movie, I just wanted more of it. It feels like it pops up in bits in this movie, right? Where you'll get a little bit of the sort of the character introspection and kind of these like these bizarre sort of magical realism representations of like the internal battle that Amleth is going through. But then some of the time it kind of fades into the background. And in a movie like The Lighthouse, it's at the forefront the entire runtime. Here it feels a little bit like this sort of turns into a historical action adventure by the numbers epic for little stretches, and then it's like, oh wait, no, we're in a Robert Eggers movie, like, and the movie remembers who's directing it. Is maybe kind of my main problem with the movie, is just I wish there was like more of that stuff in it. But that being said, there's still quite a bit of it, and it still works really well for me every time it shows up.
Yeah, and rewatching it, I was like, oh yeah, there's more here than I remember. In terms of the weirdness and in terms of the violence, I was like, this thing is much more violent and grim than I remember too.
Easily Eggers' most violent movie so far. We'll see what Nosferatu looks like, but like, it's there's a few moments in this movie that are truly like, holy fucking shit. Like, I forgot about the guy. I forgot about the guy in the chainmail when like the massacre is happening like way late in the movie,
Mhm.
when Amleth like comes back after jumping off the boat, that guy who's in the chainmail where his stomach's cut open and his entrails are just plopping out everywhere.
Yeah.
I was like, oh fuck. Yeah, big entrails movie.
Mhm.
Decent amount of entrails in this.
lot of bodily fluids.
Yeah.
No
piss or shit,
no.
but we get burps and farts and some spit.
Mhm.
Hafthor Bjornsson spits on somebody at one point.
When-
on Alexander Skarsgård.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. And when they're doing the berserker chant and we get that lovely like zoom in close up on Skarsgård just going nuts.
Yeah.
He's like
Oh, you mean during the Heilung number? when the movie arrives at its Heilung music video, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is inspired by the Viking saga of Amleth,
Yes.
which went on to inspire Shakespeare's Hamlet. I think it's unlikely, based on what I read, I think it's unlikely that Shakespeare actually read the original legend.
Right. It was probably just a thing where it was an oral tradition.
Yeah.
The legend had kind of mutated and morphed and taken different forms and seeped into the literature and the culture, right? Because obviously Vikings had visited the British Isles at many points throughout history, and this legend would have had a lot of chances to be spread and shared, right? So it's just one of those things where it's just kind of it was a pervasive part of Western culture by the time Shakespeare was being educated, and he would have heard some version of this story, even if it wasn't like the original account or whatever.
Yeah. And Eggers also took inspiration from tons of other Viking sagas. There's little bits of those all throughout this movie.
Yes. He's also very clearly aware of the Hamlet connection as well.
Yes.
And in points plays it up intentionally, which is fun if you're familiar with Hamlet.
Yeah.
It's fun watching this movie as someone who knows Hamlet pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And he was also inspired by Conan the Barbarian.
Oh, of course. Yes.
And I also heard that when he was writing the script, he was listening to lots of metal.
Oh.
To like he wanted to get into that.
Yeah.
Tap into that hyper masculine thing that this movie's going for.
We might as well talk about that, because like I think this movie is clearly inspired by heavy metal. And what you just said seems to confirm that, right? There is like, this is maybe like the most black metal movie I've ever seen. Like it is very just from the aesthetics of it, the landscapes, again, like the way that actual traditional Viking music is used in the movie. It's used in a way that plays up its link to heavy music in the Western world, right? Like you listen to the throat singing and the Viking war chants and stuff, and it does sound like it's like, oh yeah, like we're tracing the line here from this to like Burzum or whatever. Which, by the way, Fjolnir's oldest son, I think his name's Thorir.
Yeah.
Varg Vikernes ass motherfucker.
I keep thinking
Reddit neckbeard ass motherfucker.
I always think of him as Ezra Miller. He just looks like Ezra Miller to me.
He does kind of look like Ezra Miller. Just something about his demeanor, how he's like this kind of like skinny, pasty, kind of weak looking guy,
Yeah.
but he's like really pompous and arrogant and is like acting super tough. I'm like, this guy, if whatever the 895 AD equivalent of the N-word is, this motherfucker's saying it all the time. I get huge like white supremacist Viking supremacist vibes from this guy. Probably good that he gets stabbed in his bed.
Yeah.
I don't think we needed him as king.
Probably not.
Anyway. We could talk about the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the movie opens the way all movies should, I think, with a shot of a volcano and a guy invoking the Norse gods
In
voiceover.
Yes, in like gravelly, like almost like Tibetan throat singing voiceover.
Yeah.
Right? Where he's like, It's like almost the Sardaukar chant
Yeah,
from Dune.
Hear me, Odin.
Yes.
It's fucking I locked into this movie immediately.
Yes.
From frame one.
Yes. Speaking of Sun, both the visuals and the vocals in this opening would fit squarely in like a Sun music video. It's like, oh, if a Sun music
if
video,
Sun made music videos,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
If you went to a Sun concert and they like projected this,
yeah,
on a screen, you'd be like, oh yes, of course. But yeah, hard ass opening.
Yeah.
It's good. We're in 895 AD.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kid with dork ass bangs. This will grow up to be Alexander Skarsgård. This kid is not pulling off these bangs. And Viking Ethan Hawke is his dad, and he comes home from the raids.
Yeah. I really like Ethan Hawke in this movie.
He's good. So I had a couple observations about Ethan Hawke. One is that he's very good in this movie.
Yeah.
Another is that I think him riding in on his horse at the beginning, and really just kind of him throughout his little bit of this movie, I kind of think this is the coolest guy, coolest looking guy, like that we've had since Rutger Hauer in Lady Hawk. This is like, again, just a guy, and I think it's just something about a guy on a horse I'm learning. Where I'm just like, this guy looks fucking rad as hell. He looks so cool in this movie.
I mean, this movie does sort of ascribe to the Ryan Gosling and Barbie view of masculinity,
Right,
where
yeah.
it's horses.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and the other observation I had about Ethan Hawke. So I know Robert Eggers, big research guy.
Yes.
Very, very into historical accuracy in his films. All of which have been set in some real past historical era. So I'm sure that the accent that everyone's doing in this movie, including Ethan Hawke, is authentic and true to the time and the place. That being said, especially Ethan Hawke, but other people in this movie too, sounded a lot to me at points like they were doing a Christopher Lambert impression. When Ethan Hawke was talking and he was like, "Yes, my son, you will be king someday." I was just like, I could totally see Christopher Lambert.
There can be only one.
You must avenge my death if I am struck down in the battlefield.
Ethan Hawke's accent, I think, is the weakest.
Yeah, that's why I put the Lambert note
right
next to his name.
It's definitely the weakest. But one thing I love about Eggers is he just consistently gets great performances from his actors.
Oh, he does.
He's a real actor's director,
clearly,
for sure.
Yes. I mean, that's evidenced by the fact that Willem Dafoe, one of our great living actors, continues working with him over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched an interview where Willem Dafoe gives this really long response to why he loves working with Eggers and how he saw The Witch and The Witch got him interested and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the interview cuts to Robert Eggers, and Robert Eggers is like, yeah, he's one of the greatest actors in the world, and he wants to work with me. Holy shit, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, Robert Eggers just totally starstruck by Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, I mean, how could you not be?
But going back to Ethan Hawke, who is an actor that I love, it's sort of remarkable how kind of, scrawny, scraggly-looking Ethan Hawke is effectively portraying, or convincing us that he's a Norse king.
Yeah.
Like, he just totally locks into this role and this character for the brief time that he's on screen.
And I think crucially, he does the hat trick that the movie requires of him, which is when you are watching this movie for the first time, spoilers for the Northman, obviously, we're going to be talking about the whole plot. But like, when you're watching it for the first time, you're seeing him from Amleth's point of view the entire time, right? So early in the movie, Amleth worships his dad. And the movie sort of presents the king as this mighty noble warrior, this great dad, this perfect husband, right? Because you're seeing it from Amleth's eyes. But then later in the movie, when you learn the information from Nicole Kidman that this guy was like a piece of shit in her view, right? Like, you get the other side of the story that Amleth didn't know, right? then when you think back on the scenes with Ethan Hawke, and especially when you rewatch it, you're like, oh yeah, I do detect some of that in there.
Yeah.
He's playing both things. He's playing like the noble king, like the positive image of masculinity. But in the scene with Nicole Kidman, when she's like, hey, like you just got home, like let's go to bed, he's like, nah, like I'm not gonna fucking, show any weakness, and I'm gonna, sleep this wound off so that I can be strong for the men or whatever. And it's like, you in that scene, you are kind of like, yeah, I kind of get later on, I kind of see the thing that she's talking about.
Right.
Where it's like he was cold with her and like selfish and yeah. So I like that you can see both things in his performance.
Yeah, and this opening like long take of him, his horses and his all the returning warriors riding into the compound. I love that that camera, and we'll talk about the camera a ton in this movie, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The camera follows him, and then it sort of stays behind as he rides through the front gates, and we see women slaves being chained up and led right in front of the camera.
Yes.
And that really clues us into who this guy really is.
Right.
Early. And then when we have the returning, he's welcomed in the longhouse and returns home, he is sort of like cold and distant to Nicole Kidman, and then much more affectionate to Amleth.
Yeah, super warm to his son.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, it's very clear where this guy's priorities are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really like his performance, really like him in this movie. Also, Nicole Kidman fucking rules in this movie.
Yeah. She sort of has, I would say that she has a thankless job. But
she has a couple really good scenes,
but yeah,
that make it not thankless.
Right. I think she has, maybe on this watch, my favorite scene in the movie.
Mine too.
Which was when Amleth confronts her.
Yes. Yes, I agree. That is my favorite scene in the movie, and I think it is the most important scene in the movie.
Yeah.
I think literally the movie means something else if that scene isn't in it.
and her character and Anya Taylor-Joy's character, I think too, are both just extremely important as representations of women in this culture.
Right. In a very male-dominated, patriarchal society, yeah.
And the way that they are both sort of they're both oppressed by the men and have to be subservient to them, and then also the ways that they can have power over men.
Right. They find their own ways to take power in the world that they are forced to exist within.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Ethan Hawke has come home from the raids. He's chilling at home. He is like we said, kind of cold with Nicole Kidman, who plays his wife. Gudrun is her name.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name. It starts with an A.
Arvandil, the War Raven.
That's what it is. Arvandil. There's like the longhouse. They're drinking some mead or whatever to celebrate his return. Skull. We're doing that whole thing. Willem Dafoe's there waggling his fake penis around. He's the court jester, so he can mock with impunity. Yeah, which we love to see. And he's like making some jokes at Arvandil's brother's expense. His brother Fjolnir. If you know anything about William Shakespeare's Hamlet, you can see where this is going. So then we get the scene where basically Arvandil and Amleth go and drink psychedelic drugs with Willem Dafoe.
They get high and pretend to be dogs.
Yes, and burp and fart. This scene rocks. I love it.
It's so cool that this is so early in the movie, because I remember watching it and I was like, oh, this is a Robert Eggers movie. Yes. Like, I'm in safe hands here.
I think this scene is sort of him, like, letting you know what you're in for. Like, this scene is sort of like the litmus test for people who will like this movie versus not like this movie. It's like, if you get to the scene where Ethan Hawke barks like a dog and burps, and then this little kid farts, and Willem Dafoe is like, "Yes, good, it smells like a king," or whatever, and you're like, "Nah, I'm out, like I'm tapping out." Then it's like, yeah, this is the correct time for you to discount the rest of this film,
Right.
because none of the rest of it is going to work for you if this scene doesn't work for you. But yeah, I think the scene rocks. Ethan Hawke has been wounded in battle, and he has like a bloody gash, which he like unwraps here. And because the mead that they've drank, which I need to look in my notes so that I can remember what they call it, the vision mead of knowledge is what they call it.
Oh, so you did have the subtitles on this time.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to drink the vision mead of knowledge so fucking bad.
You want to drink the vision mead of knowledge and then lick Ethan Hawke's open wound,
and then go
and
then
then
go
have
see
a
the
spirit
Tree of
journey
Kings.
to see the Tree of Kings.
Yeah, of course I want to go fucking
All right.
see the Tree of Kings. I want to like put on some drone metal and like fucking wander around the Tree of Kings. What are you talking about? Yeah, I like the effect where Ethan Hawke's chest like opens up and Amleth like sees the tree inside of him.
The tree's like a heart with veins and arteries and chambers that extend to become like roots of a tree and branches and stuff.
And this is a really good visual representation of the driving force of Amleth's character, which is like legacy, right? He's very fixated on like his bloodline, his legacy, his lineage, right? But yeah, it's a good visual symbol that we like come back to multiple times throughout the movie to kind of and it's always kind of brought back in the same context of like, this is what is driving Amleth forward in his quest for revenge, or later for the preservation of his family, and his bloodline. And
there's so much that's set up here in terms of the themes of masculinity, and how masculinity, the role that masculinity plays in this culture. I think I read that Robert Eggers said that there's very little in terms of like this type of ceremony, this like coming of age, a boy becoming a man ceremony. So they took a lot of historical license with this part of the film.
Yeah.
But when there's so much here about like Amleth shedding his, this is the last teardrop that you'll ever shed.
Yeah.
And about like what it means to be a man, what it means to be transitioned from a boy to a man.
Yeah. This is the last tear you'll shed in weakness. Willem Dafoe says to him, which is very,
Also, Willem Dafoe looks like fucking Willie Nelson in this.
He also has pigtails, which is hilarious.
Yeah, he has the Willie Nelson pigtails.
Yes. He does look like Willie Nelson. He's also kind of...
And then when he's a shrunken head, he looks even more like Willie Nelson. Later in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Willie Nelson, he's like, what? He's 90 or some shit?
God fucking bless him.
He's entering shrunken head years. I hope he never dies.
I really do too, yeah.
But, Willem Dafoe looks insane in this. In this scene, he's also wearing kind of like a gimp mask, which is cool. There's also like some gimp masks in the scene right after this, which is basically after this vision quest that Amleth goes on and sort of accepts his destiny to take his father's crown eventually. It seems like right after they leave, his dad gets fucking iced by Fjolnir. Like, Fjolnir wastes no time after Arvindil comes home. He's like, oh, that guy's back on our home turf. All right, I'm gonna get my boys and we're gonna fucking go like fucking shank his ass. So they shoot Ethan Hawke full of arrows, and Fjolnir cuts his head off. And some of Fjolnir's guys also kind of have like weird gimp masks. I really like the costume design in this movie. Again, it's Eggers, so I'm sure there's like historical accuracy with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I love Fjolnir's helm with the like, he has a really big like fur coat or something on. I just love visually how that looks as he like steps between the other guys and draws his sword, and like Ethan Hawke's put two and two together at this point before he even takes the helm off. Yeah,
he's like, I know what's going on. You're fucking my wife and you want my job. I get it. I like Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke's like, all right. I was in Hamlet back in 2000. I know what's going on here. We're
I know this story.
I'm not doing To Be or Not to Be in a blockbuster, but I do know what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's such a weird adaptation of Hamlet.
It is weird. I've only seen it the once.
I've seen it the once too.
I don't remember it very well, but I
Yeah.
watched it in college. So Ethan Hawke gets iced here. He does have like a really cool moment. He goes out on a high note because he's got an arrow that has been shot through the back of his neck, sticking out the front of his neck. And like with this arrow fucking fully like going through his entire neck, he's like, fucking strike me down, bitch. If you got the spine, I'm awaited in Valhall. It rocks. He's like, we're all going to hell tonight. Is very much his vibe. I love it so much.
I love it too.
And obviously Amleth is a little kid, so he runs away. He hoofs it. Fjolnir cuts his dad's head off and then sends his guys after Amleth. And this one guy catches him and does just a piss poor job of murdering this child.
Yeah.
Which is his only job.
He repeatedly fails at killing Amleth throughout this movie, and I sort of feel bad for him after a while.
I think this guy has failed upward too, because it seems like in the later part of this movie when Amleth has grown up into Alexander Skarsgård, it seems like this guy has like become Fjolnir's like second in command. It seems like he's like the chief of staff, and I'm like, really, the guy who got his nose cut off by a fucking child? Like you're giving him more authority? But part of that is he lies his way into it.
Yeah.
Because he gets his nose cut off and he comes back to Fjolnir and he's like, yeah, that kid's super dead. Don't worry about him. He drowned.
The shot that tracks Amleth as he's like in these tree roots or something, or he's hiding in this old tree stump, and he pops out and starts running, and the guy tackles him. The like 90-degree flip that the camera does.
It's really
they're both
good.
on the ground, and then Amleth fucking cuts this guy's nose off. So good.
Yeah, I will say in this movie, a small gripe that I have, like a very minor gripe, is there is some CGI blood happening in this movie. The nose cut is one instance of it that does not look wholly convincing to me. Where part of this, the reason is I was watching this in like fucking UHD, the highest def, whatever, and it was just like, with that one and a couple other kills in this movie, or like moments of violence, I was like, I can see that some of this is practical and some of it is like digitally enhanced, and I'm seeing like kind of the seams on the digital stuff, and it wasn't enough to take me out of the movie, but it was enough where I was like, I noticed that, right? And it's good looking digital blood, which I don't have a huge problem with, but it is not completely seamless digital blood. And I kind of wish that it had been like fully consistent with the rest of the image, right? So like very small gripe.
Yeah, I think the shot in the next scene of Amleth escaping through town in his little cloak, trying to do an Assassin's Creed social stealth escape, which is surprisingly effective.
Yeah,
when noseless guy runs up to Fjolnir and like he's like, I've totally fucking drowned him. Swear to God, I drowned him so hard.
That kid is so drowned.
The gore on his face is very clearly CGI, and it's just sort of it's kind of hanging on by a thread. You can tell.
Yeah.
That's fair. I also think there's a lot of practical gore in this that is fucking awesome,
and it more than makes up for it.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah. But overall, I think the implementation of digital effects in this movie is done very tastefully and done very well.
Yes.
Considering this is Eggers' first big budget studio flick.
I fully agree with you, and honestly, some of my favorite shots in this movie are digital effect heavy shots.
Yeah.
Like there's some of the most beautiful images in this movie, full of beautiful fucking images, by the way, are heavily digital and it works.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, this will be totally news to you if you haven't seen Robert Eggers movies, but if you have, like, yeah, this movie's fucking gorgeous.
It's
shot by Jaron Blaschke, who he's worked with since The Witch.
So this is both of our third favorite Eggers film.
Yeah.
Of 3 so far. I will say I kind of think this is his best looking movie. It's my
Okay.
least favorite of the three, but I kind of am like, you can truly like every frame of painting in this movie, which you can sort of with The Witch and the Lighthouse, but I feel like The Witch and the Lighthouse are constrained by their setting, where it's like you get a lot of like kind of repeat images of the same locations and stuff. Here there's just so much like diversity and like the landscapes, and he's also empowered to take a more like kind of grandiose approach to his like establishing shots and stuff in this movie. And I think this is maybe like the best his movies have looked to me.
I think this is probably my second favorite looking Eggers movie.
Yeah.
I think The Witch, again, still a gorgeous looking movie, and like this movie, a lot of it is shot in natural light, shot with minimal digital effects, utilizes the landscape very well. That all being said, there are parts of The Witch that kind of start feeling a little gray and monochromatic and cold and distant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably my least favorite looking Eggers movie.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite is still The Lighthouse. I think
Yeah.
The Lighthouse has the best black and white photography of any movie that I've seen.
Wow.
Like, probably it's definitely one of the best looking movies of, the past decade.
I mean, I'm not gonna like disagree with that.
It was nominated for best cinematography
Yes.
at the Academy.
Yes.
And I am severely pissed off that it did not win.
I mean, yeah, and The Lighthouse is an incredible looking movie. I think I just admire Eggers sort of playing with color in this movie a lot, which is totally absent from The Lighthouse, obviously.
Yeah.
And so maybe that just gives it a little bit of an edge.
No,
for me.
I think the color's really good in this movie. I
It
think
is
he
really
does a
good.
great job of not making Viking culture just to be a bunch of blacks and browns and
Yeah.
grays. Like there's reds and there's greens
Yeah.
and there's blues. It's not, super colorful,
Yeah.
but it is more accurate to the period.
And when the color is like fully desaturated, like in the Draugr sequence,
Mhm.
it's very intentionally and delicately done, where it's like we're desaturating the scene, we're pulling all the color out of it, but it is for a purpose. It's for like the mood and the atmosphere, and also it still looks good, right? It's like we're bleeding all the color out of this, but it's like we're doing it in a way where the image is still like very like it still draws you in. It's still very appealing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about this movie is he's moving the camera so much in this, in the
Yeah.
way that he doesn't do in The Witch and The Lighthouse.
Right.
In The Lighthouse, when the camera moves, it's like a big moment and you notice it.
Yeah.
He's moving this camera with these like lateral dolly shots, Steadicam shots, so much in this movie for
Yeah.
just long, uninterrupted, broken takes. And very rarely does it feel like the kind of flashy long takes that you get sometimes.
Yeah.
But you'll be sitting with this same shot for a while and then realize like, oh, he hasn't cut yet. Like
Yeah.
we're still tracking this character or tracking this moment.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that I agree. I think the camera work in this movie is very like it's very subtle but very effective, which I think is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like it doesn't draw attention to itself. You're not like, oh wow, impressive long take. It's just kind of like, no, yeah, the camera just sort of naturally follows the flow of the story.
Right.
Right.
and the neck basically where we are
right.
is the
boat.
the longboat
Yes,
shot, which
right.
is awesome. So Amleth escapes, grows up, we jump ahead in time.
Yeah.
And
which, by the way, we jump ahead with an interstitial card that just says years later. Fuck yeah. I love that it is just years later.
just an indeterminate amount of years later.
I love that because I'm like, I don't give a shit how many years, but because it says years later, it lets you know when we zoom in on Alexander Skarsgård, which you'll talk about in a second. It lets you know immediately that kid is that guy's the kid, right? Because we just got a thing that says years later. I don't need 20 years. I don't need 30 years. I don't give a shit how old this guy is. It's just like you gave me enough information to connect the last thing I saw with the next thing that I see.
Mhm.
It's perfect.
Yeah. But the shot of it starts on the shore that pushes out over the water and then turns to like track across the longboat as the Vikings are rowing.
Mm-hmm.
And then it pushes in on Skarsgård, rotates again to see some fishermen get shot by arrows, and then rotates back around to see the guy who shot him.
Yeah.
It's such a good shot. I don't have really words for it. I heard a little bit about the making of it, where it was like, no, the camera jib is passing over some of these guys that are rowing. So if you take a look at some of them, you can tell that they're like seeing the camera coming toward them and getting ready to dive into the water to get out of the way of the camera.
That's awesome. That's awesome. This shot is incredible.
Yeah.
It looks so fucking good.
He does such a good job of like showing you the information that he wants you to see.
And this is one example, but there are like a dozen shots.
Yeah,
in the movie
we haven't even talked about the raid yet.
Yeah. So yeah, we get reintroduced to Emleth. He's working on this Slav crew. He's a
berserker
warriors.
Yeah, he's a Viking, which common misconception. Viking is just the name for these types of warriors that would go out and do raids, much like pirates or whatever.
But right now he's in the land of Rus.
Yeah. He's gone east.
Yes. So he's fallen in with some Slavs. And we see them do like their berserker war dance around the campfire. This is the thing that I was calling the high lung musical number.
Yeah.
Which rocks. It's cool.
I mean, we'll talk a lot about the dichotomy, I think, in this movie of masculinity and what I bring to it is still just like the lizard brain. Like,
yes,
some of this stuff is just cool.
Yes.
The berserker scene is like rocket fuel for my lizard brain.
Right.
It's
totally.
just like, this is so cool.
Right.
I fucking love this.
Because it's just like shredded fucking muscular dudes like with swords and shields stomping around a campfire screaming their fucking heads off. It's like, yeah, of course. This is the fucking pyramid of needs.
Yeah.
This is all of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Alexander Skarsgård is such like a muscle-bound freak in this thing.
His traps are fucking huge. Bananas. His traps look like two grapefruits on the side of his neck. It's so crazy. Later on, when we see him shirtless in profile, and it literally looks like his neck is forced forward, but due to the size of his trap muscles. Like, it's like his neck has to be like at a 45-degree angle from the rest of his body because his neck muscles are too big.
Yeah, during the raid scene where he's like, I think he's got two weapons in each hand and he's just like stalking the next person that he's gonna kill. I'm like, this man is fucking terrifying.
He looks like a full-on monster in that scene. It's rad as hell.
I also feel like he's a very like he's got the kind of skinny ripped thing going on, right?
Yeah.
No, we have Hafthor Bjornsson in this movie who is much more the traditional like giant big power lifter body.
Yeah.
Or strongman
body. Yeah. Yeah, excuse you.
Yeah.
World's strongest man, Hafthor Bjornsson.
Sorry, Hafthor. Don't crush my head like a melon.
Yeah.
But I remember like for a while the standard in Hollywood, I heard like, if an actor wanted to get ripped for a role, they go to their trainer and the trainer's like, okay, so what sort of body are you looking for? They'd be like Brad Pitt in Fight Club.
Right.
Brad Pitt in Fight Club looks amazing.
He looks incredible.
I feel like Skarsgård is sort of inheriting that same
he's like the Pokemon evolution of that, where it's like, okay, that was then, this is now, we gotta have a little bit more beef on them bones.
Yeah.
No, he looks fucking insane in this movie. His physique is fucking wild, which also goes for the guy who plays Fjolnir. We see less of his body, but when we see it, I'm just like, God damn, that man is fucking ripped as hell. in the funeral, in the scene where he's at his son's funeral, and then he gets sprinkled in horse blood while naked, which is an awesome thing that happens in this movie.
Yeah.
You then see a shot of his butt cheeks after that, where he's like turned, his back is to the camera, and he's like amping up the crowd. And I'm like, those are some of the most fucking ripped butt cheeks I have literally ever seen on camera. There are some primo buns in this movie.
We got a lot of butts in this movie.
Yeah, lots of butts.
No dicks, but not for lack of trying.
Yeah.
Eggers was like, no, I want the volcano fight at the end. I want dicks to be flopping around.
Yeah.
And the studio put the kibosh on that.
I really wish that they had given that to him, but
Yeah.
I also understand why they didn't.
Yeah.
I would like to see it though.
I'd like to see more dicks.
If the dick cut exists, I would love for that to be released.
I guess there was a dick. There were dicks in Lighthouse. Like we got a shot of Pattinson cranking his hog to the mermaid scrimshaw trinket.
I have heard about this actually.
I want that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope Pattinson has that just for his own personal use.
I hope we get dicks in Nosferatu.
Yeah.
I want to see Orlok's crazy looking dick.
Even if not Orlok's, just some hog.
Someone's
would be
dick.
Nice. Someone's
Yeah.
dick. Show me someone's dick in Nosferatu. Maybe Count Orlok could, I don't know, bite a guy's dick or something. Not enough vampires biting dicks. There's big old veins in there.
Yeah.
I feel like I've never seen that in a movie. Now I'm
I
trying to
don't
think.
know.
I'm trying to think, and I don't think I've ever seen a vampire movie where a vampire bites and drains blood from an erect penis, which seems like it would be an obvious thing.
Sure.
Right?
Listeners, if you know of a non-pornographic
Yes,
film
right.
in which a vampire bites a dick, right into us at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.
I'd like to see it. They're always going for the neck.
Yeah.
There's lots of blood in the dick.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Skarsgård here, grown up Amleth, we see him go on this raid.
Yeah.
Is basically the next big thing. I mean,
it's okay, so I did say that the Nicole Kidman scene may have been my favorite this time, but
yeah.
I don't know, man. This raid is just like
the Kidman scene still is my favorite, but this scene fucking rules.
It's just insane to me that like they shot this in 2 days.
It rules.
They spent a day rehearsing it and then a day shooting it. And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
How did this not take at least a week to choreograph and block and coordinate? Because it is like a technical masterpiece.
It's really, really impressive. There's like a dozen things happening in the background of any given shot, right? And there's all these long tracking shots like we've been talking about where we're following Amleth through this town that they're raiding. I mean, the start of it is also insane where they throw the spear.
Yeah, and he grabs
he
the
catches
spear
it and throws it back.
Yeah, baby.
That's fucking batshit. And then he climbs the wall with his axe.
Which they did take from an actual saga. There was like a report, like there was a saga where the hero caught a spear and threw it back.
So crazy.
Which is like, it's so cool.
It's rad as hell. But then, when they're like doing like the raid, once they get inside the walls, it's like really long, uninterrupted tracking shot of Alexander Skarsgård just going through here and fucking killing dude after dude after dude. I really like the guy where he like kicks the guy's shield into his face to kill him. That one goes fucking hard as hell. There's also the one where he like puts the sword like on the guy's neck and then like drags him across the wall. Rad shit. And it is crazy that this only took them 2 days because like while we're watching Skarsgård do all that shit, there's also a bunch of stuff happening in the background and it's like tons of extras.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a ton to coordinate.
And foreground stuff too, where like the camera passes by women and children who are hiding and trying to sneak away.
Yep.
That guy that like that Amleth catches in the throat and drags across the wall. He's like cowering and hiding too for a second.
Yeah.
And then the follow up to this, the aftermath, is also in a complete long take of the women and children being loaded into the barn.
Yeah.
And then we get a little brief introduction to Olga.
Yes.
Played by Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yep. She's like trying to save her brother or something from the Berserker raid, and she gets like dragged away or whatever. I do like that in this like after this raid scene when like all the Vikings are celebrating. We do see Skarsgård kind of having like a little bit of like a moral problem with what he's a part of, right? And it really seems to be when the women who they've like captured in this settlement are like brought in to be passed around the celebrating Vikings. We kind of have like a shot that like it holds on Alexander Skarsgård when that happens, and it looks like he's like sort of unsettled by the fact that like these women are being treated as like a bounty or like a reward for the men. He seems to like not be totally down with that. So we're like kind of getting like a little bit like, yeah, he's like motivated by this kind of like bloodthirsty quest for revenge, but he still has like morals. Like he still has like his lines that he won't cross, even though he's kind of part of this like shitty mercenary band that's like going to these towns and like pillaging and shit. It also did give me a funny thought of like just a Viking having like a moral problem with being a Viking. Being like, hey guys, like I'm having some real moral reservations about all the raping and pillaging we're doing. Like maybe we should write out some like rules that we should follow when we're doing this stuff.
That's kind of our whole thing. And like you knew that when you signed up with us.
This guy's not down with raping and pillaging. You hearing this?
I didn't necessarily take it.
Bjork is fucking. He's not down with raping and pillaging. What's wrong with this guy?
Fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily take it that way. I sort of read it. He has a very like blank, numb, stark expression, and I was sort of taking it as like he's just kind of numb to the violence and sees it as like, you know, just a part of this world that he's in.
I think that's a totally valid read on it too, and I think that Alexander Skarsgård's performance, it kind of lends itself to a certain amount of interpretation, which I think is a good thing. He is doing a real strong sulk and brood performance in this movie.
Yeah,
he is sulking and brooding.
Yeah.
For the entire duration of this film. So there are a lot of moments where you can kind of just like project whatever you want onto him. And I think he's doing that pretty effectively. He's not like a totally blank slate. Like there's definitely stuff going on. But he is sort of like impenetrable at points, which I think is important to the character and also important to this movie kind of dealing with the themes of like masculinity as well. Right. Because him not being like as expressive with his emotions is sort of like part of what the movie is saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think he's great in this movie.
Yeah.
He's becoming I don't know about one of my favorite actors, one of the actors I've come to respect the most.
Yeah.
Between this and like Infinity Pool, where he is just
so
motivated to like push himself and do things that are vulnerable and dangerous and out there.
Yeah, I think behind Stellan, he's my second favorite Skarsgård. Because there's a few of these guys.
Yeah, there's a few of these fuckers
floating around. There's
I guess
one that was in Oppenheimer. There's Bill. There's
Robert Eggers wanted Bill to play Thorir.
Oh, okay.
So, but the scheduling didn't work out, so that's why Bill got Orlok for Nosferatu.
That ended up being fine for this movie because I fucking love the guy they got for Thorir.
Yeah.
I know I was saying some unkind things about the character earlier. The only reason that the character is effectively hateable is because this actor is doing a fucking bang up job with this character.
But I think Alexander Skarsgård is doing a great job of bringing more to this character than what's on the page.
Totally.
And of course that's like fostered by Eggers as a director because he just knows how to get these performances out of actors. But Skarsgård is this guy. There is no moment where I do not doubt that he is a bloodthirsty, insanely jacked Viking warrior in this movie.
Yeah.
And then going back to the aftermath of the raid scene, I love that this movie occasionally flirts with the idea of being a horror movie.
Yes.
And the burning of the barn.
Yeah.
And with the women and children inside.
It's really upsetting.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Come and See, which has a similar scene.
Yeah.
And as much as I do enjoy the violence in this movie and the brutality of like the raid and stuff like that, there are moments like this that really shock you back.
Yeah.
Into bring you back down to earth.
Well, I think that's what a lot of this movie is about.
Yeah.
Right? Is about the nature of violence, the nature of revenge, right? And it basically being like it sort of asks the movie poses the question like what is the difference between violence that we cheer for and violence that we like turn away from and get grossed out by, right? And it's like, why is there a difference there? Like what is it about us that makes us view some things as acceptable and even positive, and other things as like reprehensible and horrible. I think the movie does a good job of kind of exploring that territory with moments like them burning the barn with all the women and children inside and holding on it while they're screaming for like a while, right? Because you're like wanting the movie to cut away, because it is upsetting. And the movie's like, no, you have to look at it, right?
Mhm.
And you have to acknowledge and accept that the protagonist of this movie is part of this, right? Like, he's not blameless. Like, he is culpable for like this thing that is upsetting. And that continues throughout the movie. I think the movie continues implicating him in acts of violence that are not defensible, right? And it doesn't paint like a black and white portrait of like Amleth is good and Fjolnir is bad, right? It's like both of these guys are flawed characters who like move through the world in violent ways, right? And there are moments in that we are that we cheer for, and moments in that we are horrified by. And the movie kind of is like forcing you to reckon with your own views on that.
And I think the Conan the Barbarian, I almost said Conan O'Brien. Conan the Barbarian. It's a very different Conan.
Be funny if Conan O'Brien was in this movie. Just shows up for a little bit. He's got a...
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of their women.
He's had a beard phase, right? He could be in this movie for a little bit.
Yeah. I think the Conan the Barbarian influence is really key to understanding this, because John Milius, who directed that, famously very conservative director, and sort of viewed that movie as like a representation of a time, even though it is a fictional film and based on a fictional story, like representative of a time when men were men, and all of that sort of thing.
That was my wet fart sound about that.
So this movie does a great job of like critiquing that and embracing the that style of violence, while also again like critiquing it and showing it as disturbing and horrifying and as a product of its time. And just like in general, I think Eggers does a great job of finding the intersection between history and myth. And how history influences us, but more importantly, the myths that we have about history influence us today. And how myth, in terms of like mythology, influenced the cultures of the time and perpetuated certain ideals about gender roles and violence and the way society should be structured. Amleth's whole arc in this movie is about legacy, like you said, and recognizing that his father is not, the good, noble, just king. He is just another king in a long line of kings who was a monster, basically.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Responsible for like great suffering. Right.
Yeah.
And he has to reckon with that. And determine like which path to take, not based on what his father would have done, but like he has to like kind of become his own man and like, determine who he is. Which I think also, like, we're about to get to Bjork. Another big thing in this movie is also fate and destiny, right? What is predetermined for you based on the position that you're born into, versus like how much can you like drive your own choices and kind of create your own fate. And I think that's part of his journey in this movie as well, is basically deciding that it's like, okay, my father wasn't perfect. I don't need to do this revenge quest to avenge him, because maybe he's not worth avenging, right? But I have to like make a decision whether to go through with this or not for my own reasons, right? So that's a good transition to Bjork.
Yeah,
Bjork is in this movie.
Bjork is in this movie. I know that she's acted before.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen her in anything. I haven't also listened to most of her music. The most familiarity I have with Bjork is one time I was really high and I watched that video of her talking about a television, and I thought it was the funniest fucking thing in the world.
Yeah, Bjork is perfect casting for this role
Yeah.
in this movie.
Yeah.
Bjork is so good in this movie. She basically has the one scene.
Yeah.
But she like fucking nails it. And so like her character, she's like a witch. And her eyes have been stabbed out, plucked out something, so she's got like empty eye sockets and like shells hanging over her face and like this crazy headdress made out of like straw. She looks fucking insane. And she's like, Alexander Skarsgård like wanders. He's like walking around camp not feeling so good about the genocide that they just did, and he like wanders into this room and Bjork's there and she's like, hello, by the way, I am a witch and I know your entire destiny.
Hey, remember that you're supposed to avenge your father? You forgot about that this whole time, you dumbass.
I have your teardrop in my hand. Do you want your teardrop back? It's time for you to go on your revenge quest.
I fucking love her in this movie. She's so good.
Well, and if you pay attention to the dialogue, the back and forth that they have, he is like finishing her next thought.
Yeah.
So this is clearly like, something that he's hallucinating or because this movie is treating Norse myths as they would have been back in that time, real to these people.
Right. And I think it's key that before he goes off and talks to Bjork, we do see him drinking heavily.
Yeah.
After like the raid thing. And that's kind of the key in this whole movie is like when it seems like magic is happening, you can always tie it to some real life thing, right? He drinks the fucking psychedelic mead with Willem Dafoe and then he sees the Tree of Kings. He fucking gets shit-faced and then he goes and sees Bjork. He, like later on with the psychedelic mushrooms that make people go fucking crazy. Like there's always like a real life rationale for any of the supernatural shit that happens in this movie. And it allows the movie to kind of play both sides where it's like all of this supernatural stuff is real to the characters, but we as the viewer always see that this is firmly connected to reality, right?
And later in the movie, when we occasionally are talking about Christianity,
Yeah.
and how it's so interesting hearing the Norse people treating Christianity as with a lot of like superstition.
Yeah.
And it's this
They're like these guys are part of a weird cult. They drink blood.
Yeah,
they worship a guy who got nailed to a tree. What the fuck?
This weird barbarian religion and shit like that.
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
love that when shit starts going down, these Vikings are immediately like, the Christians are doing this
fucking
shit.
Christians.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see a movie that like treats Norse mythology in this time period as being a very valid and widely accepted form of religion.
Yeah.
And the only reason we see it as like fairy tale and stories like Zeus and the Greek gods today is because it was crushed and stamped out by Christian colonization in this period.
Yeah, it is fun that it's like, we're in 895 AD. Christianity's the new kid on the block.
Yeah.
They don't have any legitimacy yet. Yeah.
But yeah, the Bjork scene's fucking great. And
Yeah.
it didn't have to go as hard as it did.
It goes so hard.
Yeah.
It rocks.
I guess what happened, part of how this movie started was Eggers and his wife went to Iceland or went to exploring Scandinavian Europe, and they met Bjork.
Hell yeah.
And then Bjork introduced Robert Eggers to, I'm sure I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Sion, who helped write this movie with him, who is he's an Icelandic poet and novelist and writer.
Yeah.
So it's just funny that like this movie happened because of Bjork, kind of.
And she was like,
Since I introduced you guys to each other, can I be in the movie? Will you make me a person in your movie? Maybe I can be a spooky witch.
I didn't expect we'd be doing Bjork impressions on this.
You didn't?
No, I didn't actually. I don't have a good Bjork.
I don't have a good Bjork either. My Bjork is passable at best.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, so he basically is reinvigorated on his quest for revenge after talking to Bjork, who is maybe just a drunk hallucination that he's having. It can be both. And then so we get a scene where he hears about where Fjolnir is now. Like they're basically the Viking crew that he's with is sending slaves off various places. These enslaved people from the various settlements that they've raided. So they're selling folks to Constantinople, and some of them are going
Istanbul?
No, sorry, it's Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople, but in 895 AD, it was still Constantinople. Why did Constantinople get the works? It's nobody's business but the Turks.
I'm sorry.
It's fine. I'm glad you did it.
He overhears that they're sending slaves to Fjolnir.
Yes.
And goes to his friend. He's like, hey, so what's the deal with this Fjolnir guy,
I love that this dude that he asks about Fjolnir will take literally any opportunity to dunk on Fjolnir. He's like, yeah, so this Fjolnir guy, what's he like? And he's like, oh, that guy? He's a fucking failed king. Norway stole his kingdom. He ran away to Iceland, and now he's a fucking shepherd. Pussy. Like, his vibe is very much like, this guy is like Fjolnir's number one hater for no reason, which I love. Just taking any opportunity to be like, oh yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah. So Skarsgård disguises himself as a slave, sneaks aboard a slave ship.
Yes. It's very funny.
Becomes friends with Anya Taylor-Joy really quickly.
It's very funny. This is a movie where it's like, it's a historical, mythic epic. There are moments where you have to suspend your disbelief. One of the funniest ones to me is when he swims and climbs up this slave ship and then just like kind of casually sits down next to the rest of the slaves and no one notices.
And also no one's like, hey, for a slave, you're really just fucking jacked and like well fed. Like you look like you've been eating well these past few weeks.
Also, everyone else is dry on this boat and you're soaking wet. Like you were just submerged in water.
He's doing the breaststroke a ton in this movie.
He is. He's got a good breaststroke.
And I was having flashbacks to pool lessons as a kid. Never had a good breaststroke.
I didn't do pool lessons because I didn't grow up in Phoenix. So me drowning as a toddler was less of a risk than it is for Phoenix children.
I really didn't like swimming lessons.
Yeah.
So as my reward for completing a summer of swimming lessons is my mom would get me one piece of candy from the pool vending machine. I got 2 Reese's cups for 8 weeks worth of swimming lessons.
That seems like it's not enough payment. I think she was
agree.
I think she was holding out on you.
I fucking agree.
It should be at least 1 Reese's cup per lesson.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he voluntarily enslaves himself, which is insane. It's insane when he brands himself too.
Yeah.
With like the slave brand. And because he's the hardest motherfucker of all time, he's just kind of like, yeah, it's good.
Well, this guy's talking to iron implements throughout this movie.
Oh yeah. He fully monologues at his sword.
I love a guy talking to his sword.
Yeah.
But I love when he brands himself. He's like, I will thank your master for the warmth you gave me. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to go this hard.
David doesn't have that in front of him. He just pulled that right off the dome. Yeah, so we get to Iceland. And I love that immediately this movie is like, Iceland sucks. Every time people are talking about Iceland, they're like, yeah, this place is a shithole. I want to get out of here as soon as possible. This place fucking blows. And meanwhile, it's like the most gorgeous landscapes you've ever seen in your life.
I'm sure it was like cold and damp and shitty, but like this place looks pretty rad.
Yeah. It looks cool.
Pretty gorgeous, beautiful location.
And Anya Taylor-Joy, Olga, is also on this slave ship, so she also gets sent to Iceland with him. They kind of, on the boat, have a little meet cute where he bonks his head on a mast and has a vision. This is one of my favorite shots in the movie, is he hits his head on that mast and then he's like laying down This is during the rainstorm. She's holding him, and he has like a hallucination, a vision, something, where he's like on the ship with her, and then it's like the Tree of Kings on the water, and there's like Aurora Borealis. It's like all green, and their faces are kind of bathed in this green light, and then like the big wide shot of like the tree on the water with the lights and stuff is one of those shots I was talking about that's like very digitally enhanced. Like a lot of it is CGI, and it looks fucking great, and it's one of my favorite visuals in the entire movie. It's amazing. And it is kind of like, it goes a long way to showing you that these characters have kind of an immediate connection, which is important because they don't get a lot of time to develop this relationship, this romance that they have. It's there, but it's like it's not the main focus of the movie. So I think that this kind of early moment where we sort of see from his perspective that he kind of already has an idea that this woman is going to be like very important to him. It helps kind of make their relationship work better in the rest of the movie.
So the slaves are led to Fjolnir's farm in this through the gorgeous Icelandic countryside. His farm is very close to a volcano, which that'll be convenient in case we need to have a third act sword fight there. They're selling the slaves, and Skarsgård pulls the thing that I think seems to happen a lot in Sword and Sandal or fantasy movies whenever someone wants to be sold to a specific person to be a slave for whatever reason, which is just randomly start beating the shit out of the other slaves to prove that you're the best.
Yes.
He doesn't even really beat the shit out. He rattles the chain and like throws someone to the ground, basically, and starts going,
I'm really strong. Yeah. And then it works because Fjolnir comes up and he's like, that guy's really strong. Like, let's get a look at his teeth.
Oh, I like when they're sticking his fingers in his mouth to check out his teeth.
Yes, make sure that he doesn't have a bunch of dental rot going on. No, it looks pretty good. All right.
Yeah, Fjolnir doesn't have a great dental plan for his employees.
There is no dental plan. If you come in with rotten teeth, it's only going to get worse. So Alexander Skarsgård, Amleth is selected by Fjolnir to work on his farm, and Olga is as well. So we got Anya Taylor-Joy is also there. He picks her. Fjolnir picks her, not to do any specific labor, but for like gross lascivious reasons. He's like, this one's hot. Keep her around for me. Basically, is kind of his, So we get into a little bit of like Alexander Skarsgård is like infiltrating the like Fjolnir's house and stuff. We get the funny thing where at one point he's like carrying this pole that this tapestry is on, or another guy's carrying the pole that the tapestry is on, and Alexander Skarsgård fucking shoves this guy out of the way, grabs the pole and goes, go take a piss.
Yeah.
Which is really funny. And like sneaks into the house under the guise of like doing this task, and is like scoping out kind of the situation. He sees his mom again for the first time since he was a little kid and all that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think the next really big thing here that happens is he, as they're settling into the camp and Amleth is starting his infiltrations and getting the lay of the land, he follows a fox to a cave where he encounters the He-Witch, who I think is giving the narration at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
It's a similar voice.
It is. The subtitles confirm that because the subtitles at the beginning of the movie say He-Witch in brackets, and then,
the only thing that I can think of when I see this guy is, he who wishes to cross the bridge of death must answer me these questions 3. Ere to the other side he see.
He also sounds a little bit like Stellan Skarsgård, which is very, like, kind of jarring.
Yeah.
Because Alexander Skarsgård's the other guy in the scene, and I'm like, they didn't get Stellan for this. He doesn't look like Stellan.
No.
He's got this huge beard. He looks totally different. But his voice kind of sounds like Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah, it sounds like he could be talking about spice production on the rise.
My Dune. Yeah. And the scene rocks. He's got Willem Dafoe's shrunken head. And this is another moment where it's like, yeah, Robert Eggers is kind of towing the line of this being a horror movie, because all the shit with Willem Dafoe's shrunken head and him doing like this magic ritual to get it to speak is like really creepy and weird.
Yeah.
And like you kind of are tense, like waiting for some crazy shit to happen. And eventually like Amleth hears Heimer. I think that's the name of Willem Dafoe's character.
Heimer the Fool.
Yes, he hears his voice and basically gets more encouragement to like take his promised revenge. In this scene, when the shrunken head is revealed, so the he witch like has this blanket and he pulls it off the head, and it's Willem Dafoe's shrunken head. Alexander Skarsgård's reaction to that is poor Heimer, and I was like, that has to be an in-joke for people who know the Hamlet connection, right? Because it's poor Yorick. It's the same thing, right? I'm like, that must be Eggers being like, for the people who know.
Interesting.
We'll throw in a poor Heimer.
I didn't make that connection, but that would make sense, I guess.
Yeah, it was one of those moments where I was like, I see what you did. You are making this movie in a post-Hamlet world. As all movies are, every movie is in a post-Hamlet world. That's how the technology of movie making works.
The he witch is like, hey, remember what Heimer said about, shedding your last teardrop and blah blah blah. You gotta go do your fucking quest. So now we need to get your ass a sword.
Yes, the fucking he witch narrating this montage of this magical sword being made, while dudes are fucking Viking chanting as the soundtrack, fucking whips so much ass.
I love lore about a fucking fantasy sword.
I just love seeing a sword get forged in a movie.
The pouring of the hot metal and the hammering, dink, dink.
I'm getting goosebumps even just talking about it.
Yeah.
It's like, I love seeing a sword get forged in a movie. It rocks. This sword is like, it's made of the rarest iron. It had to be quenched in human blood. I love when they quench it in human blood and then the guy who forged it pulls it out and it's on fire. Fucking rad as hell. Again, the most black metal movie of all time, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to get the sword, you gotta fight a fucking Draugr to do it.
Yeah, he has to fight a zombie giant. So Alexander Skarsgård, I don't know how tall he is, but he's got to be over 6 foot.
Yeah, he's like over 6 foot, I think.
He's a big guy. He is like tiny compared to this fucking zombie.
This guy's played the zombie's played by Ian White, who is one of 2 actors in this movie, the other being Hafthor Bjornsson, who have played the Mountain on Game of Thrones.
Yeah. This guy is like, he looks like he's 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
He's enormous. And he's a zombie. This fight is fun. It's short, but I don't think it needs to be longer.
No.
I think it works. I love the thing where it's a very video gamey moment of this movie where you see Alexander Skarsgård figure out that the zombie is avoiding the shaft of moonlight in the cave. He's like, oh, hey, it walked around that. Maybe that's its weak spot. Right? And then he like backs it up into it and it gets like mesmerized by the movie.
Yeah, I love that. And he hits it in the back with the axe and then picks up its sword and cuts his head off.
Yes. And then one of my favorite shots of the movie. It's so fucking good because he cuts the zombie's head off. And it goes from the 2 of them centered in frame, and then it just slowly tracks over to the chair where the zombie was sitting when Alexander Skarsgård came in, and he's there standing in front of the zombie just sitting motionless with the sword in its lap, and it is like perfect visual language to let you know that this was like an internal battle that he just fought and none of this actually like physically happened. Right? He had to like, it was like a mental trial to get the sword and then he just grabs it. Mm-hmm. It's fucking genius.
Yeah, it's
love that shot so much.
It's such a simple and elegant way to clue the audience into, in case you've been having trouble keeping up with the supernatural shit in the movie.
Yeah.
All of it is been in the character's mind.
Right. It's not real. It's real to him, but it's not real. Right.
I remember seeing some reviews about people being like, you need to have a master's in Norse mythology to understand this movie. And I'm
Disagree.
like, no, you don't.
I'm dumb as
You
shit.
just
and I
need to
get
pay
this
attention to the movie.
movie.
You need to know what's going on in the movie.
Yeah.
Somewhere in here, we get the title card. The title cards throughout the movie are in old Slavic or Old Norse runes.
Yes.
And then subtitled in English.
Yes.
We get the title card here, The Nightblade Feeds, to let you know that this is the portion of the film in which said Nightblade will be feeding.
Probably the best of those like chapter title cards, the Nightblade feeds, although the last one, which is The Gates of Hell,
Yeah.
might give it a run for its money. Both of those go hard as fuck.
But man, seeing the Nightblade feeds just to clue you into like, hey, a bunch of people are gonna start fucking dying now, is great. And it basically Skarsgård sneaks back into the camp. There's a moment here where he thinks about killing Fjolnir, but it's he gets spotted by one of Fjolnir's dogs and sneaks away.
And this is when he monologues to his sword.
This
He's
is when he talking to his sword.
It's not our time yet,
Not
baby,
your
but
time.
I'm coming back for
Sleep.
you.
He buries it under some in a mound of dirt or something.
Yeah.
Also, we catch up with Olga here, and it's clear that Fjolnir has been harassing her and such.
Yes.
And
he basically he comes in pissed off about something, and he's like, I gotta blow off some steam. Get me the hot one, basically, to one of his other like lady slaves, and she like gets Olga up. And he's like, okay, like, I'm gonna have my fun. And she lifts up her dress to show that she is like on her period. She has like blood running down her leg. And he's like, oh, a little blood, I don't mind. And then she like gets a handful of her period blood and just wipes it all over his face. And he's like, fucking disgusting. I can't even look at you anymore.
that's fucking rad as hell.
It is a fucking baller move from
cool.
Olga. It's rad as hell.
And
I think Alexander Skarsgård is like, nice. He's like,
that's my girl.
I want that woman to have my children.
It's sort of funny because I think they have a really, really great relationship, and it's clear that like she does care about him.
Yeah.
And he sort of takes a while to catch up to the fact that like, hey, this girl wants to bone me.
I think it's just because he's so consumed with the whole revenge thing. He's
just
got a
very
one-track mind.
Focused on the revenge thing.
Yeah.
But we haven't talked about Anya Taylor-Joy,
right?
Who obviously is fucking great in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, she's
I think one of my favorite actors of her generation. It's wild to me that The Witch was her first movie.
That is crazy because she is so good in it.
It is like she's I think she's like 17 or 18 when she shot that or something.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's handling the period dialogue so well.
Yeah.
And is giving such a great performance along with it. Like, holy shit, what a first movie.
Yeah.
And it's great to see her come back and work with Eggers again.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is between the two, my least favorite, just by virtue of
there's less of her in it.
It's less of her in it.
Right.
She's not the main character.
Yeah.
It's not quite as complex of a role as Thomason was.
Yeah.
And while there is a lot of heightened dialogue in this movie, it's nowhere as near as like period accurate and archaic as what she's doing in The Witch.
Yeah. Yeah, like everything that I've seen her in, and this is no exception. I liked the Queen's Gambit.
I haven't seen that yet. I've really wanted to see it.
It's good. It's good. I think in that you can kind of see, because it is so much of her. So like it's kind of like a one-woman show, and it's a TV series, so you're spending a lot of time with her. I think in that you can see her kind of versus like in The Witch or in The Northman, you can kind of see where she's strong and weak as an actress in The Queen's Gambit, but I would say she's still quite good in it. I think that one, that performance has like a little bit more variety in terms of quality, but I think that's just by nature of like she's being asked to do a lot in that show. But yeah, I think she's great. I think she's great in general, and I think she's great in this movie. And I do think she is sort of like a very vital piece of the movie in the same way that Nicole Kidman is, like you were saying, because I feel like their perspectives are important to like the movie making its point, right? About men and their relationship to violence and all that stuff. Anyway, so then we go to play some rugby or whatever, cricket.
Yeah.
Viking cricket where people die and that's the game.
It is a real game.
Yeah.
But it's a fun little movement in this movie. I had a really good time watching this, and this is Egger's longest movie. And in the past, I've felt the runtime more than I have here.
Yeah.
Here, I was, like I said, I was locked in from frame one and really rocking with this thing throughout. I do like this as a little movement in the movie. That being said, maybe this could have been trimmed.
If you could lose anything in this movie entirely, like any sequence entirely, I think it is this one. I'm glad they didn't, because I like it in the movie, but it's like, if you were going to make this movie shorter, you could just cut out the entire fucking Viking cricket sequence.
Yeah.
Like, it's not super necessary. The only thing narratively that it accomplishes is basically shows that Fjolnir and Nicole Kidman, I already forgot her character's name.
Gudrun?
Yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Queen Gertrude. It shows that they kind of he earns their trust, right? And so that kind of allows the rest of the shenanigans that happen. It allows him to not be like the prime suspect, right? Because they're like, oh, that guy saved our son's life, so like he's cool. And so it makes like kind of all of them ruining Fjolnir's whole life. It enables that. But I think the movie would still function without it. But again, I'm glad it's here.
I'm glad it's here because I like seeing Hafthor Bjornsson just like
Hafthor.
So just so ready to fucking murder the fuck out of this kid.
Hafthor Julius Bjornsson, the world's strongest man, beating the shit out of this kid. Just like fucking this kid's running and he's just like fucking backhands him. And then this kid's just bleeding on the ground. I was like, oh fuck. I believe that's what would happen if Hafthor Bjornsson hit a 10-year-old one time, because he's like unconscious and like maybe dead.
Yeah, I mean his palm is the size of the kid's face.
This guy has deadlifted like 1,200 pounds in real life. So it's like, yeah, of course if he fucking hits a kid while in a full run, that kid is maybe dead. Hafthor is not in this movie very much. It's just this one scene, and he like has like almost no dialogue. He's mostly just yelling.
Yeah.
But I was like, I kind of think he's also good in this movie.
Well,
like,
yeah. We talked about how many of these performances are just yelling, or like how much yelling there is in this movie, and he's a great yeller.
Yes.
He's doing great at what the script requires him to be, which is be the most terrifying, giant, hulking monster of a man that has ever lived, and yell a bunch.
To be fair, he is typecast as that, as this role in things. He's also the Mountain in Game of Thrones, and for good reason, because as a strongman competitor, most of his job is to be the most giant, scary man you've ever seen and yell a bunch. That's what people expect from strongman competitors.
And also lifting things.
Yeah. But you got to yell while you're doing it. You got to be a showman in strongman. It's not a pure strength sport like powerlifting. There's like a showmanship aspect to strongman a little bit.
Sure.
It doesn't really factor into the competition, but it does factor into like you making money off of it, right? Like brand deals and stuff. That's why Hafthor Bjornsson has way more money than Zydrunas Zaviskus, because he's a better performer, you know?
Yeah.
I like him in this little scene. I like him almost killing this kid. and then Alexander Skarsgård headbutts Hafthor Bjornsson to death.
He headbutts him like 12 times.
Yes. And while he's doing this, there's a thing that I like a lot in this movie, which is like the actual graphic violence is off screen, but you're getting the sound.
Mhm.
So you're just seeing Alexander Skarsgård headbutt over and over and over again, and his face is getting bloodier and bloodier. And you're just hearing like, right? And I'm like, that is more effective than you showing me his pulped face. Like, as much as I like seeing a pulped face,
Right.
I think it works really well, and this movie does that a bunch of times, where it's like the most horrible violence you hear but don't see, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. And the blood continuing to accumulate on his face as his head dips out of frame.
Yeah,
It's pretty great.
it's good. Also, just headbutting half Thor Bjornsson to death. Holy shit!
Yeah.
I get why Fjolnir's like, oh damn, this guy rocks. Like, yeah, let him take a wife, let him do whatever he wants. He fucking killed the biggest guy anyone's ever seen. And so after this rugby match that ends in murder, fucking Fjolnir's shitty neckbeard son has a great scene here with Skarsgård, where he's like, yeah, father was very impressed with you. You can take a wife. You can, have your choice of work assignments. You'll be our you'll have the easiest life that you could possibly have as a slave, but you'll never be free, bitch. Like, he does like a big power play on him here, and I feel like that is kind of what sets up Skarsgård like stabbing him in the bed later. Right, where he's like, fuck this guy specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it ties back into the themes of masculinity and how the role that men play in this culture, where like to the idea of what it means to be a successful man is to lord over other people,
Right, is to have power over others
and enslave them.
Yep.
Right, which definitely we still see that today.
Yeah.
In many different ways. And I think that's sort of what sticks with Alexander Skarsgård is with Amleth is like, I'll never be like my father.
Yeah.
As a slave here, and my only way out, my only way to become a king, to become a man like my father, is to, take power away from Fjolnir and his family.
Is to take power by force. Right. And I think we see later in the movie him kind of realizing like, maybe that's not a thing I want.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's telling, and I enjoy how the movie makes it clear that like Fjolnir did the same thing, and then only a short few years later was deposed as well.
Yeah.
And so just like cycles of power and cycles of violence in this world are so volatile and can shift dramatically.
Yeah.
At the drop of a hat, basically.
Yes. This very much is a Sins of the Father ass movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the only other note that I had about the scene where Thor is power playing over Amleth here is just that Thor has huge school shooter energy.
Oh, definitely.
This guy, if this kid was not a Viking prince and he instead lived in the 1990s to 2020s in America, he would be going to his school with a semi-automatic firearm.
Afterwards, the FBI would find a blog post about him talking about the phonies and all of that.
Yeah, the phonies. Catcher in the Rye?
He'd be making Doom levels of
his
high school.
Yeah, he'd be on, r/red pill or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I like the servants, the slaves and the servants and the lower class.
Yeah.
They're like having a little party that of course becomes an orgy at some point where it's like run around the woods and chase down your girlfriend and fuck her.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're all out of town for this sporting event. We just watched a bunch of guys get killed. Everybody's drunk. Everybody's horny. Let's have a good time. And here is also where Alexander Skarsgård's like, well, I got permission to take a wife, anybody I want. And, you know, Anya Taylor-Joy's been making eyes at me. Maybe I should figure this out.
She's those weird.
Oh boy, she is
doe like Sid the snail, Sid the sloth from Ice Age ass eyes.
Yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy making eyes at you is maybe it's the nuclear option of someone making eyes at you.
To be fair, I want to make it clear, Anya Taylor-Joy is one of the most beautiful women in the world.
Yeah,
but I cannot deny that she does sort of look like Sid the Sloth.
She's got a set of peepers on her, that's for sure.
She do.
It is very funny because between Nicole Kidman and Anya Taylor-Joy, you have two of the most beautiful women who have ever walked the planet with the weirdest eyes of all time in this movie. Where Anya Taylor-Joy's are like a foot apart and Nicole Kidman's are 3 centimeters apart. Both very beautiful women, though.
Yep.
And great actresses, and both great in this movie. And so Alexander Skarsgård and Anya Taylor-Joy bone here.
I like the exchange that they have, where he wanders up to one of the women that's running around naked in the forest.
Yeah.
He thinks that it's her, and it's not. She comes up behind him, and
that's what that shot was. He thinks that's her.
Yeah, he thinks that's her.
I was a little confused by that shot. It's not like a problem that I had with the movie. It was just a moment where I was like, what is happening here? Because he comes up behind a woman who looks like her, and there's another man kneeling in front of that woman and like putting his arms on her.
It sort of looks like that he thinks he's being cucked.
Right. And I thought for a second I thought he was having like a vision.
No.
Like I thought he was like seeing something that wasn't there. But he's just mistaking someone else for her.
But she comes up behind him and she goes, "You found me." And he turns around and says, "Were you lost?" And she says, "Only if you were searching for me."
Yeah.
Fucking great line.
Good line.
Good line. That's some A+ game right there.
Yeah, there's some good like kind of flirty romantic dialogue throughout this next little sequence because they fuck pretty quickly here. In the forest, right? And then they have like some pillow talk where she's praying to the Earth Mother and shit. In Old Slavic.
I'm sure that's you know, if you've banged a chick from Sedona, you're well familiar with this.
Yeah, where she prays to the Earth Mother after. Yeah, and it's like kind of you know, one of the authors of this screenplay, like you mentioned, was an Icelandic poet, and some of it is like very poetic, especially here. In the scenes between the two of them, you get a lot of like the kind of poetic language.
Yeah.
And it's nice. And she's like basically praying for success on his revenge quest. So she's basically like, the pillow talk basically boils down to, hey, this like blood feud that you have with your uncle who like killed your father, I'm all in. By the way.
I love that she's completely supportive of him taking revenge up until a certain point in this movie.
Olga is a ride or die bitch.
Hell yes.
She is. And I don't think he appreciates her enough.
I don't think so either. Again, like I think the first part of this movement in the movie where she's just so hell-bent on revenge. Every time they hang out, she's always like, "Hey, so how's the revenge going, man? I'm really interested in that." And he's just like, "My life is a living hell. I'm so depressed, and I'm Batman, and
I have to brood and sulk while eating this disgusting bland soup, and eating this stale maggot-infested bread because I'm a man." Yeah. But then so she's fully all in on revenge quest, and then we get. This is my favorite portion movement of this movie, which is like Amleth has basically been like, the time will come when I am supposed to kill him. I know that it'll be on a lake of fire because that was part of the prophecy that I got. And he's like, so until that day comes, I'm just going to make this motherfucker's life a living hell. And my favorite part of the movie is just them pulling a bunch of pranks on Fjolnir.
A bunch of incredibly violent murders.
Yes.
in the guise of pranks,
Yes.
which starts off with butchering a bunch of dudes and then arranging them into the shape of a horse.
Building a flesh centaur and nailing it to a building. Yes. It owns. It rocks. It's so good.
It's one of the things in this movie that really straddles that line between like being effectively disturbing and like holy shit and horrifying and all that, and also just like that is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it rocks. It's so good. This is when
I wish like slasher movies had half of the creativity with their kills.
Oh yeah.
And this happens all off screen. I mean, we see them get killed, but like the creation of the flesh horse is all off screen.
Yes. And like there's this like religious kind of authority figure, this wise woman or shaman or something, who is like in Fjolnir's employ, who like sees this and is like, this is like fucked up shit. Like the sword that did this basically drank these guys' blood. Like, you need to be concerned about this. And so Fjolnir's kind of getting more and more freaked out. And then is the dog thing the next one? Where he goes out, like Amleth goes out into the hills and like starts barking like a dog with a pack of wolves, and then drives all of the dogs in their town insane and makes them attack their owners.
Yeah, Fjolnir gets attacked by his own dog because Amleth's out there running with the wolves.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome that in this movie, Alexander Skarsgård howls and barks like a dog, and it makes a bunch of dogs go crazy and kill a bunch of people. Yeah. It rips.
And then it culminates with the hallucinogen poisoning in the stew.
Yes. Anya Taylor-Joy finds some magic mushrooms and spikes everybody's food with hallucinogens.
Yeah. At this point, they're Fjolnir's men are like, so there's a demon. There's a spirit that's stalking us.
Specifically what Fjolnir says, and I love this line so much, is, "This is trollish sorcery." It's awesome. Yeah. So they're fully like, this is black magic. Like, this is a curse of some kind.
So they arm all the slaves and like tie them to posts, and it's like, get ready to fight the undead.
Yes, the demons are coming. And I like that the guy with no nose, who had his nose cut off by Kid Amleth, is like making fun of adult Amleth when he's like stationed at his post to like fight the demon. He's like, yeah, the demon's gonna come and eat your fucking ass. While he's still chowing down on psilocybin stew.
Yeah. But they all go crazy. There's one guy who like starts writhing on the ground and stabbing himself in his own neck.
Yeah, that is one of the hardest visuals in this entire movie, is like everything is kind of cloaked in like smoke and fog, and everything's lit by like campfires, so it's just this kind of like ominous orange glow, and then this guy writhing on the ground just stabbing himself repeatedly in his own neck. It fucking rocks so hard.
Yeah, so in the middle of the psychedelic mushroom poisoning scheme, Amleth sneaks away to confront Gundren, or rescue Gundren.
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
And this, like we said, this scene really stuck out to me this time because it is really the first time in the movie where Nicole Kidman gets a chance to act, and she owns this scene completely.
It's like we said, it is my favorite scene in the movie. It rocks. I think, like I said, it's the most important scene in the movie because until this point, you've only had Amleth's point of view on this whole thing, where he's been like, I'm avenging my father. He was unjustly murdered by my uncle. I have to rescue my mother, right? He has his little chant. I will avenge you, father. I will save you, mother. I will kill you, Fjolnir, right? And he shows up and he's like, hey, I'm here to free you from the guy that forced you to marry him. And she's like, you are fucking stupid. I am here by choice, and your father was a monster.
Yeah.
And I love... Alexander Skarsgård is also great in this scene. I love that you can see that this like breaks his reality.
Yeah.
He's like he can't... He didn't expect this, and he didn't account for it. Like, there's no way for him to respond to this, because he's like, no, the way that this was supposed to go is you were supposed to be like, thank you, my son, you're here to save me, and we were supposed to ride off into the sunset, right? And he's like, wait, like, you wanted this? And she's like, yeah, your father like enslaved me and like forced me to be his wife, and you are she basically tells him like, you are a product of rape.
Mhm.
Like, I did not want to sleep with your father to have you, and as a result, like, I kind of view you as like a thing that I'm sort of disgusted by. And oh, by the way, I gave my blessing for Fjolnir to kill you
Yeah.
too. Right?
I begged on hands and knees.
Yes. Yeah. And
Um,
she rocks all of this dialogue. She is so fucking good in this.
Yeah.
This is why you get Nicole Kidman for this part.
Sure.
Right? Because it's like the rest of the movie, she's not doing that much. But the reason you get Nicole Kidman is this scene. Yeah.
One of the things that I really love about this movie is in the brief scenes that we've had with Amleth and Gundren before this, he's been alluding to the Oedipal element of Hamlet that we all know.
Yeah.
It really comes to the forefront here in a couple of ways.
Yeah.
When he draws his sword on her, and
She
she's
says,
like,
"Your sword is so long."
It's like, okay,
And he's like, stop that.
but
Mom.
but after she tells him the truth, and she's like, but hey, you know what? Why don't you kill Fjolnir and our children, and then we can go, right off into the sunset together. And
Yes.
you want to fuck me?
Right. And
Yeah.
this is her power play, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the way that she has survived in this world.
Right.
Is basically like, when there is a bigger, stronger, more aggressive man who shows up to take the kingdom away from her current husband, her power calculus is like, the easiest way for me to survive and ensure my continued, like, the continuation of my lifestyle is to ally myself, or at least leave the door open for that guy, right? Where it's like, yeah, like, this guy might kill my husband, and if he does, I want him to view me as a candidate for, like, sticking around and not being beheaded next.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's very clearly like a calculated move on her part. I don't think it comes from any real place of like, oh, I'm sexually attracted to my own son.
No, it's
right?
another form of manipulation.
Totally.
And throwing
Yeah.
him off his guard. Like, she's doing like 5-dimensional chess.
Yes.
In this.
And it works because he freaks out and runs
Yeah.
away, basically.
And I love the other thing is like that he can't reconcile is that he's always seen Fjolnir as a monster.
Yeah.
And then he gets the reveal that his father was a monster and didn't love her.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Fjolnir, despite being a monster, did love his mother,
Yeah.
that doesn't change things for him.
Yes. I think it's all of that being after the reveal that Gundren and Fjolnir's relationship is one of love for each other. Like, she says to him, like, I love him. Like, that's why I did this, right? And so then later seeing like two people choose each other in this world where that's like not really the norm, with the knowledge that like that's what Gundren and Fjolnir also did. It kind of makes Fjolnir more sympathetic as well when you enter the final battle, right? When the two of them are fighting at the end, it's like, these are kind of two guys who like chose love in a violent world.
Yeah.
And then they're fighting each other to the death, right? It just adds a layer of complexity to the whole thing that I really like.
Yeah. Great scene. Nicole
Yeah.
Kidman crushes it.
Yeah, she's so good.
And
then basically Amleth hooks back up with Olga and is like, hey, plane went down without a hitch, except my mother is a monster and I'm going to kill her too.
So I did maybe, kind of, sort of, stab her eldest son in his bed while he slept.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He does kill the neckbeard in rage.
And steal his heart.
And steal his heart after talking to his mom.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty rad.
So then, like, the next thing is basically he has stolen the heart and run off into the hills. And, like, the next day, Fjolnir finds this out. And he's like, fucking, what kind of monster does this? And I love the line that he has here where he's, like, freaking the fuck out. And he's like, what kind of evil steals the hearts of brave young men? Which just feels like the thesis of the movie laid out in a single line. And Nicole Kidman's like, chill, babe. I told you, it's my son. We're going to kill him. It's your nephew. We're going to kill him. It's fine. Just hold it together. And he starts like going apeshit on the slaves and being like, y'all need to tell me what you know. And then Amleth is like, hey, looking for this? It's your son's heart in a bag. And Fjolnir like sends all his troops after Amleth. He does an admirable job.
He puts up a good fight.
He puts up a good fight, but eventually he's overwhelmed.
He doesn't kill any of them, which I find interesting.
No, he doesn't even unsheath the sword because I think the sword is for Fjolnir.
Right.
Right? So he's hitting them with the sheathed sword. And I think it's like a kind of like a principle thing for him where he's like, I'm not going to unsheath this until it's time. Right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And then, of course he screams, I am Amleth the Bear Wolf.
Yes.
Son of King Armadillo the War Raven, and I am his vengeance. Anytime we have a sword and sandal revenge movie, we need a moment where he's just, the main character's just like, hey, this is me. This is the guy that you killed.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna kill you now.
Yeah. And my name is Inigo Montoya.
Right.
You killed my father.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Yes. So he's eventually overwhelmed by Amleth's or not Amleth's, Fjolnir's troops. Olga gets away. She runs away during all the chaos, right? She gets a little cut on her neck because Fjolnir is interrogating her when he shows up. And then they string up Amleth in like a barn, and Fjolnir's interrogating him, being like, "Where's my son's heart?" And I really like Amleth's. In this scene, I really like Amleth's total kind of belief in his own myth at this point, like where Fjolnir is like, "Tell me where my son's heart is," and Amleth is basically like, "You can't kill me. I know it's not my time to die. I'm gonna fucking fight you on a lake of fire. Like you can't kill me in this barn," right? And it's like, according to what the movie shows us, that's not true, because the supernatural stuff is like mostly in his head, but he believes it so thoroughly that he like doesn't fear death at this point, which is like it's just a very cool thing with the character, where we've like been let into his world so thoroughly and his beliefs that it's like by the time he's strung up in this barn and he's like, you know, you can beat me as much as you want, I'm not gonna die. You're like, oh yeah, he believes that. Like the movie has showed us evidence for why he would believe that.
Or he is overcompensating for his doubts out of spite, as to not appear weak too.
Yes, totally. Which is, you know, that's what masculinity does to us.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta double down because backing down is weak, and whatnot. So then Fjolnir leaves, and then the crows stage a jailbreak, which is rad as hell.
Yeah.
These ravens just like peck at the rope until it breaks, and it's like, all right, I'm out of here.
And then Odin shows up like fucking Gandalf the White.
Yeah. Kind of the main moment in this movie that where the supernatural stuff seems to be textually real is the Raven jailbreak, and also the guy not being able to get the sword out of the sheath, because there's like one of Fjolnir's flunkies, it might be the guy with no nose, has Amleth's sword, his magic sword that he got from the zombie, and he's like trying to wrench it out of the sheath and it won't come out, so he just kind of tosses it aside because it'll only come out for Amleth. So like that's kind of the one moment in the movie where it's like, maybe the magic is real, right?
No, he does. It's not Nose Guy, because when he comes back at the end, he stabs Nose Guy in the nose just to kick dirt in his eyes one last time,
which does rock.
But yeah, I think it is the one moment that the supernatural is played a little bit more textually,
right? But
I think it's fine. I think it's fun. It works really well at this point.
It works.
And he escapes. And we don't see it, but it is told to us. It is conveyed to us by like he's being carried by a Valkyrie across the lake.
Yes, and wakes up in a hot spring, and Anya Taylor-Joy is
totally buck-ass naked.
Yep, with great way to wake up in a nice Landic hot spring with your naked wife. But sorry, I have to go back to the barn for a second. I just looked at my notes.
Yeah.
I just looked at my notes and I love this line so much. Alexander Skarsgård in that scene says Fjolnir and Amleth are having their standoff while Fjolnir's torturing him, and Amleth says, "Odin the Allfather will vanquish your god of erections." Because I guess Fjolnir is like more of a adherent of like the Viking equivalent to Bacchus, like the party god, right? And he's like, "Nah, not your boner god has no power here." Just made me laugh a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's getting better in the hot springs, and then they hitch a ride on a boat. So basically, Anya Taylor-Joy is like, "Hey, idea. We both escaped. How about we fucking ditch Iceland, a place that, as we have established, sucks ass, and we go somewhere else and just like live our lives?" And he's like, "I might be down for that, actually."
Yeah.
And I think his arc at this point works really well for me, where like the knowledge that his father was like a monster who maybe isn't worth avenging kind of brings him to this point in the hot spring where he's like, yeah, maybe I could just give this up. Right?
Yeah, he has a line or something. I don't remember if it's here or if it's earlier when they first make love at under the moonlight and whatever, where he's like hates all I've never known.
Yeah,
and like he's experiencing a different emotion for the first time. He's experiencing love. He's experiencing a way out of this cycle of violence.
Yeah.
And I think I think at this point this is his. He sees himself. If he goes through with his vengeance, falling into the same path and the same cycle of violence that the kings before him have done.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think it's done really well.
Yeah.
Also, the ship captain here is Ralph
Ineson,
Ineson from The Witch.
Yes, they hitch a ride on a boat with that is captained by Ralph Ineson with an earring and an alt-right haircut.
Yeah. I don't trust this guy. I don't think you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Kate Dickie from The Witch is also in this movie, completely in like background shots.
Huh.
Like she has some lines, but she's really like blink and you miss her.
Yeah, I didn't notice her at all. On this ship, we get the reveal that Anya Taylor-Joy, Olga, is pregnant, right? And Amleth kind of senses this, right? He has like a vision of twins on the Tree of Kings that are like his descendants, right? And this is kind of like a crucial moment in his character journey where he has like given up the quest for revenge. He has been like, no, yeah, we're gonna run. We're gonna like hook up with my family in Britain, and they can set us up, and we'll live a nice, comfortable life, right? And then he learns that he's gonna have these kids, and he's like, I just blew up that dude's whole life and killed his son. He's gonna want revenge on my kids, right? And so like, mostly to protect his family, he's like, I should go back and actually finish what I started and kill that guy. And the first time I watched this movie, this moment didn't work as well for me. For whatever reason, on rewatches, it has gotten progressively better. And I feel like Amleth's arc totally works for me now, where it's like this moment where he's like, I gave up the revenge quest for selfish reasons. Now that it's a selfless reason to protect my wife and my kids, like now I'm back in and I'm going to go do this thing, right? It works for me. I think it's effective enough. And I think their relationship they've kind of done the bare minimum on this relationship in this movie, but it works well enough that this moment where he jumps off that boat and swims back, it's like, I get why he's doing this and I am rooting for him, even though it would be easier for him to just stay on the boat and like go be with his family, right?
That's interesting. I think the movie does a good job of leaving this moment ambiguous and up to the viewer.
Yeah.
Every time I've seen it, and especially this time, I was the opposite, where I was like, nah, dude, you have a way out.
Yeah.
Like take the way out. Is Fjolnir gonna track down your kids? I don't think so. Like, I don't think he's gonna be able to, depending on where you go. You can run from this.
Yeah.
But I see this more as him tapping back into the idea of legacy and fate and destiny and being like, no, I need to finish this path. I need to have the duel on the Lake of Fire as was foretold in the prophecy.
Yeah. And I think it's that too. I think it is both things. It's him rationalizing something that he wants for selfish reasons with something that's like a little bit more like palatable to the man that he has become.
Well, and the other thing is, I think Anya Taylor-Joy's reaction to this is so powerful and such a strong performance where she's pleading with him, and then after she leaves, she like just basically does this like enchantment.
She prays to the north wind. Anya Taylor-Joy exits this movie in fucking world-class fashion.
Yeah.
Where it's like she's been a constant presence in this movie. She's one of the leads. This is her final scene. And the last thing that she gets to do is be like, I'm praying to the daughters of the north wind. Fucking take this ship to somewhere where we'll be safe. And the last shot that she has in the movie is like her like throwing her arms up in the air and the wind catching in the sail, and it's like hard as hell.
Well, and because the end of the movie where when he's like having these hallucinations, and it's Anya Taylor-Joy and her kids like being like, hey, good job getting revenge and saving us. Right. I feel like what is actually more likely the case, she's on this boat with these smugglers, pirates, what have you, and they have either had their way with her, or at the first port they're gonna sell her off to slavery.
Potentially, like
that's. I mean, and not like these guys are acting really threateningly or anything like that. But
but that's the world we've
established. That's the world that this movie takes place in.
Yeah,
and I see the ending as a much more tragic one. It is.
I do fully agree that the happy ending is only in his head.
Yeah.
Like Anya Taylor-Joy raising the two twin babies and him being carried to Valhalla by the Valkyrie. That's his dying wish.
Yeah.
Right? But it is not reality. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think to be clear, I think his decision to leave the boat is motivated well in the movie for the character, but I do think it is like the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Like he should stay on the boat, but I understand why he doesn't.
It is comparable to the moment in Heat, which spoilers for Heat, which you haven't seen.
Yeah.
When Robert De Niro has an out, but the tragedy of that character and the tragedy of Amleth is that men cannot escape who they are.
Right.
And so he decides to not take the out.
Yeah. It's more, I feel like it's less that men can't escape who they are, and more like men can't escape who they are expected to be.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Like it's like society's, like the culture's expectations for what a man is and what a man does is what you can't escape. Right? Because if he just runs, then he's the guy who ran. Right? Then he's a coward. Right? And then if he goes to that volcano and dies in a heroic duel to the death, then he's a legend. Right? That's how you get the myth.
Which is where we are now, basically.
Yes, he goes back to the town.
He kills everyone. Mm-hmm. He kills the youngest. After stabbing his mother.
Yes. So he storms into to Fjolnir's house. Nicole Kidman jumps out of a closet with a sword, which whips ass. As much as I love Nicole Kidman with a gun.
Yeah,
Nicole Kidman with a sword, good replacement.
Good, okay.
I feel like it's a 1-to-1 replacement. It's not diminish. It doesn't diminish the effect at all. I love Nicole Kidman with weapons in general. But yeah, she straight up sword fights him. It's a short sword fight, but like they exchange a few blows. And then he stabs her, and she says, "In the heart, thank you," which is her last line in the movie. Hard as hell. And then this fucking little kid, like he's a gremlin.
Yeah, jumps on him like a spider monkey. And just starts stabbing the shit out of him.
Stabbing those enormous grapefruit traps.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, there's a lot of meat back here for me to fucking stick this knife into. Sorry, I was just hitting my wall because I was imitating this kid stabbing Alexander Skarsgård. And then, so he kills this kid. Again, that violence off screen. We don't see the slice that kills the kid. We see the aftermath with the kid with his like stomach gash. But we don't see it happen, which I love. And then Fjolnir just comes in and sees his family dead, right? And I love him just picking up his kid and putting him on his shoulder and then grabbing his wife to like drag her out and being like, I'll see you at the gates of hell, motherfucker. Like, okay, neither of us have anything to lose now. You know? Like, I killed your family, you killed my family. Let's finish this.
Yeah.
Right?
At the gates of hell, you will find me.
Yeah. And then, you know, title card, The Gates of Hell.
Yeah.
Which
Naked
is,
sword fight in a volcano.
yeah.
I like him saying when he rides up to you know, around the base of the volcano.
Yeah.
And Fjolnir's decapitated his horse.
Yeah.
And
Which is a thing from like the other funeral that we saw for
Yeah.
Thor earlier. They like cut the head off a horse as like a part of their Viking funeral ritual.
And I think it's also just like a sign of like, this is a point of no return. He's
Right.
committed to doing this.
Right. Yeah.
And the
Not riding outta here.
The bodies of Gudrun and Gunnar are laid out on the floor. I like him having a moment to sort of say goodbye.
Yeah.
And he even kind of says goodbye to Gunnar, the youngest son too.
Yeah, and he's basically like, "Hey, we're all gonna meet in Valhalla. Right? We all died by the sword. We're all going to the same place.
Yeah.
Right? And
Which I imagine will be an awkward meeting in Valhalla.
Yeah. You're gonna get up to Valhalla. You're gonna be in the mead hall up in Valhalla, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, hey, sup? Yeah, feels like not super long since we last saw each other."
Fjolnir's gonna be up there partying with the family, and then Amlet's gonna walk in like, "Hey, everybody!" and his record scratch.
Yeah. Arvindil walks up. He's like, "Awkward. I've been here for a while, so like I'm used to this, but you know, you get used to seeing people that you brutally murdered up here in Valhalla." That's
Valhalla is my favorite, you know, depiction of the afterlife in mythology and religion, because it's just like
getting drunk.
Yeah, what if when you die you get to go to a giant mead hall and party with the gods?
Yep, and just be drunk and singing and I don't know, fucking watching a guy shit on a table or whatever they do in Valhalla. Willem Dafoe's up there.
I think that's the VIP rooms in Valhalla. You have to pay to get in.
Oh,
there.
sorry, I got confused about. I got Valhalla confused with Sylvester Stallone's house. Guy shitting on a glass table.
That's the Epstein Island wing of Valhalla.
Yeah. Jeffrey Epstein better not be in Valhalla. That guy didn't earn that. So yeah, then there's these two guys do a naked sword fight in a volcano, and it's the coolest shit I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if the final fight in Revenge of the Sith was
good?
Actually good?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool
Imagine
that
that.
like this fight is shot entirely in silhouette and still looks really good, and you can easily track who's who. Like it doesn't feel like he had to do it that way because they couldn't be swinging dicks around or whatever.
Bummer.
But it does end up working.
Yeah.
For the end.
Yeah, I think it totally works. This fight looks great. There's some more like suspend your disbelief shit for cool visuals where they're like stepping very close to lava, and it's like, well, that's not how that works, but I don't give a shit. And yeah, it's amazing. And you know, there's the smoke and flames, and some of the flames on the set that they were shooting on are clearly practical, like Alexander Skarsgård and this other actor whose name I don't know off the top of my head. Apologies to the guy who plays Fjolnir, who is great.
He's a Danish actor. His name's like Claes Bang. I don't know how to pronounce it.
He rocks.
He's great in this movie
but,
too. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's clearly just fire close to where these actors are doing sword and shield choreography, which is amazing. And then some of the background stuff with the volcano eruption is really good looking CGI.
Yeah, the CGI is great. I mean, there's nothing worse than like Adobe After Effects embers.
Yeah.
Just like plaguing a scene that has fire or smoke in it.
Yeah.
Little preview of perhaps my worst movie of 2024 has that in spades, and there's none of that here.
Yeah.
It all looks really well. really well done.
Yeah.
Great blend of practical and digital effects here.
Yeah, it looks incredible. There's the great moment we talked about it towards the beginning of the show where like there's a moment where Amleth is sort of bested by Fjolnir for a second, and he's like contemplating like, should I just give up and like accept my death? Like, would this be easier? And then he like makes a conscious decision to see this through to the bitter end, right? And just starts screaming. And again, the climax of his character arc is exemplified just by him yelling at the top of his lungs, which is very much this movie's vibe. And then the fight continues, and fucking Amleth cuts off Fjolnir's head at the exact instant that Fjolnir stabs him through the heart.
Yep.
It's hard as hell.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
how I want to go out.
Yeah. We should all be so lucky.
Yeah. And he sees a vision of Anya Taylor-Joy with their kids.
Yes.
And she's like, hey, we're safe now. Thanks. And then love the
Yeah.
final shot
Yes.
of the Valkyrie carrying him to the gates of Valhalla.
The final shot of this movie is like, this is not one of my favorite movies of all time by any stretch of the imagination. This probably wouldn't make a top 50, top 100 list at all. This final shot is one of my favorite final shots of any movie I've ever seen.
I was watching it last night, and I was like, this should be my computer wallpaper.
It's
so good.
It's such a good final shot. And again, it's a mostly digital final shot.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible. It's like the gates of Valhalla. They're sort of stylized like they're the Northern Lights, sort of. And then the horse is like ascending an invisible staircase to the gates of Valhalla. It's fucking gorgeous.
And the music is swelling, and I mean, the music's great in this movie.
Yeah.
I love the peak that it hits at the end here.
The first time I watched this movie, the thing that stuck with me the most was that final shot, where I was thinking about that for like weeks after the first time I saw this movie.
Yeah.
I was just like, man, The Northman, what a fucking ending that movie has.
Yes.
Which goes a long way. You know, I love a movie that ends, and this movie fucking ends. Yeah. And that's the Northman. Then we get title card The Northman at the very, very end.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the Northman.
Yep.
Justus.
Yes, that's my name. You seemed unsure.
Is
Uh-huh.
Robert Eggers' The Northman the greatest movie ever made?
David, I'm going to be candid with you. I came into this record expecting to say that no, it is not. Because even though I like this movie a lot, I do think that Eggers does sort of have some growing pains with the larger scope of this thing, like I talked about before. I think the stuff that he excels at in his first couple of movies is, again, that very like interior, like kind of character driven stuff. And I feel like that stuff doesn't have as much room to breathe as I would like in this movie. This movie is like 2 hours and 20 minutes. I kind of think it could be longer. Like, I kind of wish we had more time with Olga and Amleth's relationship, more time with Fjolnir, more time with Nicole Kidman, Queen Gertrude.
We all wish we could have more time with Nicole Kidman.
So like that was kind of a thing where I was like the studio getting final cut, him having this bigger budget and adjusting to making larger scale kind of epic films as opposed to kind of single location kind of small movies like he had done before. Kind of, you know, it makes this movie maybe a little more imprecise than his previous efforts. And so I was going to give it a no for that reason. And then like we talked about it and now I'm like, but it also rocks so fucking hard though, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, yeah, do I wish they spent more time with the characters and that stuff that I think Eggers is so good at instead of some of the action? Like, sure, maybe, but also anytime action is happening in this movie, I'm having the time of my life, you know? And so it's like, I don't know, the greatest movie ever made is a movie that's so entertaining or compelling that it's the only thing that matters in the world,
Sure.
right? And I kind of think this one is maybe more on the entertaining side than the compelling side compared to Eggers' other films that I've seen. But entertaining is still one of the things that we give greatest movie ever made for. So, like, it's a soft yes, I think, after this conversation.
Okay.
I think it's a soft yes. I will give it a yes. The Northman is the greatest movie ever made. David, is The Northman the greatest movie ever made?
So I've been clear before, Eggers is my favorite filmmaker of the past decade. I think of this new crop of directors, particularly operating in horror, along with Jordan Peele and Ari Aster, and a few others, he is by far the best among them. Which is not to discount those other two gentlemen I just named, but Eggers' stuff is so perfectly tailor-made for me.
Yeah.
The Witch and The Lighthouse are perfectly tailor-made for me.
Yeah.
I think The Witch and The Lighthouse showcase his strengths so much better than The Northman in some ways.
Right.
Where the themes of The Witch and the themes of The Lighthouse speak to me a lot more. I think the period dialogue in those movies is so beautifully done and so impressive. I think they're some of the best written scripts of all time. I love the small, contained aspect of those films. So I always knew that the Northman was not going to be as good as those movies and not going to be as thematically deep as those movies.
Yeah.
Watching it this time is kind of the best time I've ever had with it, where the runtime felt just right. I was really enraptured by the performances. I was blown away by the camera work in this thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which, I mean, I knew this movie looked good, but I forgot how good this movie looked. And some of those long takes in this movie are really, really stunning.
Yeah.
And circling back to the themes, as much as The Lighthouse explores masculinity in a much more interesting way to me personally, I sort of think The Northman is no slouch either. Like, The Northman is doing a lot to explore masculinity, to explore violence and violence against women and the role that women play in this world. And what makes Eggers such a compelling filmmaker to me is his love of history, the way that he explores history. Let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
There's some filmmakers who. Let me back up even further for a second.
We're just gonna back all the way up.
I think some people treat historical accuracy, like with way more importance than it deserves.
Yeah.
Where movies are about telling stories, not replicating history.
1000%. Yes. If I wanted that, I'd go to Colonial Williamsburg.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd watch the History Channel.
Yeah.
There are filmmakers like Ridley Scott who do not give a single fuck about history.
Yeah.
And yet what makes his films so captivating to me personally is the way that he understands the way that we understand that particular historical period. He's painting on a very wide canvas with very big, beautiful brushstrokes. He's painting very broadly.
Yeah.
He captures the sweeping grandeur of a period.
He doesn't give a shit about what happened in ancient Rome. He gives a shit about how we view ancient Rome.
Right.
Yeah.
Robert Eggers cares about history.
Yeah.
And he cares about the way history is depicted. And he's an argument for historical accuracy in films because he understands how history informs the present day, how history informs myth, and how myth informs the present day. And I love mythic storytelling.
Yeah.
And there are few filmmakers operating on the level that Eggers is operating on. Beyond that, I think he gets great performances out of his actors. This movie is no exception to that. I think he has such a beautiful and precise eye to detail that lets you live in these worlds. And I think this world is one that I enjoy sitting in and living in for a while.
Yeah.
I love feeling the I love movies that I feel on a five senses level.
Yeah.
And this is one of those where I feel the cold, I feel the dirt and the blood.
I smell the stench, by the way.
Yeah.
We didn't really do it.
I smell the farts.
Yeah, we didn't really do it, but by the way, much like our Mad Max Fury Road
Yes.
episode, every single person in this movie is a disgusting shit person.
Right.
I probably won't insert the music, but you know.
Yeah. So with all that being said, I mean, like, this is my least favorite Robert Eggers movie. I'm having difficulty saying his name.
Yes.
I
caught an Edgar at one point.
Yeah. And my least favorite Robert Eggers movie is still better than 95% of other filmmakers.
Yeah.
And I think after this is the fourth or fifth time I've seen this movie, I think it's probably in my top 100 movies of all time because I think it's the greatest movie ever made.
Hell yeah.
And as just as good as The Witch and The Lighthouse. If you want to split hairs, you can do that.
Yeah.
But it is a worthy film, one that I love watching, and I can't wait to watch it again.
Yeah.
Probably in a couple years or so. I think it's rad as fuck.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for Nosferatu.
Yes, I too cannot wait for Nosferatu. It's going to be super exciting to see what he does with that.
Yeah.
And see what he does again with like a, big budget studio picture. Cause that'll be an interesting kind of evolution. He's also taking on a
Yes.
a legacy property sort of.
Yeah.
In the way that you would expect Eggers to, in that it's like an old kind of weird, royalty-free Dracula.
One thing we
Yeah.
didn't talk about, not to extend our verdicts much longer.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about the Hamlet of it all.
Oh, yeah.
I sort of think if you watch this as a Hamlet adaptation,
Yeah.
it falls apart because it's just like comparing it to Hamlet. Hamlet's Hamlet.
Right.
But
yeah.
I think he does enough different and puts his own spin on this.
Yeah.
That it sort of it distances itself from
Yes.
being connected to Hamlet pretty early on.
It's key that he's adapting the Norse legend, not Shakespeare's version.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the nods that he does to the legacy of this story are subtle and respectful, right?
Mhm.
And he never tries to do Hamlet.
Right.
He tries to do a action adventure historical epic.
Yeah.
Not a character drama.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think if you're viewing it through the guise of it being an Hamlet related to Hamlet, you're going to be disappointed. But
right. Yeah.
doing the historical epic thing, I think it's one of our best.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you go in as a fan of Hamlet, knowing what this movie is, you will appreciate the areas where it is similar to and different from Hamlet. And I think it's an interesting companion piece to the Shakespeare of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, again, not to extend things in this very long episode too long, but while you were talking in your verdict, I did also want to say, when this movie came out, I did see some online chatter from the worst people in the world.
Oh, sure.
Celebrating this movie because of how anti-woke it is. Because everybody in this Norse epic is white, and we're portraying men as strong and women as subservient, and this is a traditional conservative movie. And to anyone who thought that about this movie, I would like to say, fuck you, go die, and you watched a different movie than I did, because this movie actively is refuting your worldview, and you're too stupid to see it.
And Eggers has spoken in interviews about how conscious he was of towing that line and what Norse mythology, Norse iconography has come to represent for the alt-right. So he's very aware of it. Every time I think about that, I think of a picture I saw of some fucking jack-offs sitting in the theater doing Nazi salutes with bowls of raw ground beef that they were going to eat. And I just know those guys were shitting their fucking brains out about 30 minutes into their screening.
Yeah.
And I have that makes me happy. That makes me smile.
I hope they all die.
Yeah.
I hope they die of liver disease.
Yeah. Hey, that's how we're closing out 2024. Nazis die of liver disease.
Yeah.
Hey,
Nazi
guys.
punks fuck off.
Nazi punks fuck off. Hey, dipshits. Thanks for hanging with us for another year.
Yes.
Continue to spread the word about the show. We would love to have more listeners next year.
Yeah.
This year was a pretty, I mean, we're doing okay for what we have,
For a show by two total unknowns out of Flagstaff, Arizona,
who also have no interest in trying to market this show at all.
We have better listenership than could be expected.
Yeah.
So, we appreciate you continuing to listen and continuing to let people know about the show. Next year is going to be a big year for us. We're going to hit episode 100 during the calendar year of 2025.
Yeah.
So, it's just keep the momentum going.
Yeah. We've had quite a few listeners abroad this year. I would love to see more countries pop up on our analytics over the next few months. Hey, we're going to take we haven't really decided yet. We're going to take a week or two off.
Yeah.
We'll come back at the beginning of next year and do our best of 2024 episode where we will go over our favorite films of the year, our worst films, our most disappointing, or same sort of deal as last year.
It's good that we're taking some time off because I got to watch more movies. I've only seen 14 movies released in 2024, and you're way ahead of me.
I am way ahead of you, and I still have more to watch. So we haven't decided yet how long that's going to be. We want to. Christmas has not happened for us yet back in the past where we were recording this. So we want to take some time to ourselves, but we will let you know on our social medias when that happens. Until then, stay safe. We love you guys. Have a great holiday.
Yep.
And as always, later dipshits.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Greatest Movie Ever Made. Please remember to leave us a rating and a review, and to subscribe to the show wherever you listen. We appreciate you supporting the show and spreading the word. Tell your friends to listen, tell your enemies to listen, tell your mom to listen. If your neighbor has an unsecured Bluetooth speaker, connect to it and play an episode. You can follow us on social media at TGMEM_podcast. And if you've got a movie that you want us to talk about, send us an email at thegreatestmoviepodcast@gmail.com.